The wedding invitation sat on Evelyn Cross's desk like a loaded gun. Her ex-fiancé wasn't just getting married, he wanted her there to witness his victory, to see him claim the old money bride Evelyn could never be. But billionaire CEOs don't lose twice. Across Manhattan, a delivery driver named Caleb Warren was counting coins for his daughter's medical bills, unaware that one chance collision would drag him into a world of champagne and revenge. What started as a simple transaction, one night, one check, one lie, would detonate both their carefully constructed lives. If you're hooked, stay until the end. Like this video and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The Manhattan skyline cut sharp against the November dusk, all glass and ambition, as Evelyn Cross stood at her corner office window 23 floors above the chaos. Her reflection stared back, slate gray suit tailored to intimidate, dark hair pulled into a knot so tight it could have been a dare. At 34, she'd built Cross Capital into something her father only pretended to understand, a legacy that didn't need his name attached to survive. The wedding invitation mocked her from the center of her otherwise pristine desk. Mr. Damien Caldwell and Ms. Victoria Hartford Stone request the honor of your presence. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Damien, her ex-fiancé, the man who'd walked out 18 months ago with a speech about incompatibility that really meant she'd chosen boardrooms over garden parties one too many times. Now he was marrying into Hartford money, the kind of family that made Evelyn's billions look like new paint on old wood. And he wanted her there, wanted her to watch. Bastard, she whispered to the empty room. Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Miss Cross, your 4 o'clock is waiting. Evelyn didn't move. Cancel it. It's the Meridian deal. They flew in from Singapore. Then they can fly back. She pressed the button harder than necessary. Clear my calendar for the rest of the week. All of it. Silence. Then carefully, is everything all right? Evelyn's finger hovered over the intercom. Maya had been with her for 6 years, long enough to know when the ice was cracking. I'm going to a wedding, she said flatly, and I need a date. She heard Maya's sharp intake of breath. Everyone in the office knew about Damien, about the engagement that ended in carefully worded press releases and Evelyn's month-long disappearance to the London office. I'll contact the agency we used for the charity gala. No. Evelyn turned from the window, her heels clicking against marble as she moved to her desk. No actors, no models, no one who'll smile too wide for the cameras. She picked up the invitation, felt the weight of its expensive cardstock. I need someone real. Real, Maya repeated, like she was translating a foreign language. Someone who doesn't give a damn about Damien Caldwell or Hartford money or any of this. Evelyn gestured at her office, at the view, at the empire she'd bled to build. Someone who won't perform. The intercom went quiet for 3 full seconds. I'll see what I can do. But Evelyn was already walking toward the elevator, the invitation crushed in her fist. She didn't have a plan. Didn't have anything except the hollow ache in her chest and the certainty that she'd rather burn her reputation to ash than let Damien Caldwell watch her show up alone. Across town, Caleb Warren was having the kind of day that made a man question his life choices. His delivery van, a piece of rust held together by prayers and duct tape, had died on 3rd Avenue during rush hour. Again. The temp agency called to say his afternoon route was reassigned. Again. And the envelope from Mia's audiologist sat unopened on his passenger seat because he already knew what it said. More appointments, more equipment, more money he didn't have. He was 32 years old, and he was drowning. Come on, baby, he muttered, turning the key one more time. The engine coughed, sputtered, and fell silent. Behind him, horns blared in a symphony of New York impatience. Caleb dropped his forehead against the steering wheel. 5 years ago, he'd been someone else, someone with a corner office and business cards that said founder and CEO. Someone who thought he understood how the world worked. Then his startup got acquired, his marriage collapsed, and his ex-wife's addiction burned through their savings like wildfire through kindling. He'd rebuilt from nothing before. He could do it again. He had to. Because Mia needed him to. His phone buzzed. A text from his neighbor, Mrs. Chen. Mia's asking when you'll be home. Showed her the new signs you taught her. She's getting so good. Caleb's chest loosened slightly. Mia. His 7-year-old miracle, born with moderate hearing loss that worsened every year. The hearing aids helped, but the new ones she needed cost more than he made in 3 months. The cochlear implant surgery her doctors recommended? That was a fantasy reserved for people who hadn't lost everything. He texted back, "Be there in 20. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. You're a lifesaver." The van started on the next try, because of course it did, because the universe had a sense of humor. Caleb merged back into traffic and tried not to think about the past, about the company he'd built, and the sharks who'd smiled while they stripped it for parts. Ancient history. Water under a bridge he'd burned himself. Except on nights when he couldn't sleep, when the walls of his cramped Queen's apartment pressed in, he still saw their faces, still heard the lawyer's careful language. "This is a standard acquisition. Everything's been approved. Sign here." He'd signed. He'd trusted. He'd lost everything. "Ancient history," he said aloud, like repetition could make it true. But the truth had a way of finding you, whether you were ready or not. The collision happened because Evelyn wasn't watching where she was going. She'd left the office without a destination, just walked until the fury in her chest turned to something colder. Her driver trailed her at a discreet distance. She'd waved him off twice as she moved through the evening crowds of Midtown. People parted around her automatically. They always did. Something about her face, about the set of her shoulders, made strangers step aside. She was so focused on the pavement, on putting one foot in front of the other, that she didn't see the man carrying the massive box until they collided. The impact sent papers flying. Evelyn stumbled, caught herself against a building, and looked up to find a stranger on his knees gathering scattered documents. The box he'd been carrying lay on its side, contents spilling across the sidewalk. "I'm sorry," he said without looking up. "Wasn't watching, damn it!" A folder skidded toward the gutter. He lunged for it. Evelyn should have kept walking, should have let her driver handle it, or just disappeared into the crowd. But something in his voice, the exhaustion, the defeat, made her kneel down and grab the folder before it reached the street. "Here." She held it out. He looked up, and their eyes met. Later, Evelyn would struggle to explain what happened in that moment. It wasn't attraction. Not yet. It was recognition of something she couldn't name. This man, with his worn jacket and calloused hands and eyes the color of winter storms, looked at her like she was just another person on a crowded sidewalk. Not a CEO, not a cross, just someone who'd helped him pick up papers. "Thanks," he said, taking the folder. His fingers brushed hers. "I'm usually more coordinated. Long day." "I know the feeling." Evelyn heard her own voice, cool and controlled, and hated it. She bent to collect more papers. Financial statements, she noted automatically, along with medical bills and something that looked like a custody agreement. "You don't have to." He reached for the documents, but she'd already read enough. Mia Warren, age 7, bilateral sensorineural hearing loss. Their hands touched over a sheet detailing cochlear implant costs. Caleb pulled back like he'd been burned, his jaw tight. "Those are private." "I wasn't reading them." The lie came easy. Evelyn handed him the stack. "I'm sorry for running into you." He studied her face for a long moment, and Evelyn had the unsettling sensation of being truly seen for the first time in months. "You're the one in the suit," he said finally. "I'm the one who should have been paying attention." He stood, offering his hand. "Caleb Warren." She hesitated. The smart move was to leave. Thank him, walk away, forget this ever happened. But the invitation was still in her pocket, and Damien's face was still in her mind, and this stranger with his medical bills and kind eyes was still looking at her like she mattered. Evelyn took his hand. Evelyn Cross. Recognition flickered across his features. Not awe, just acknowledgement. The CEO. Among other things. She released his hand. Around them, the sidewalk crowd flowed like water around rocks. "What's in the box?" Caleb glanced down at the overturned container. "Client documents. I do delivery runs for a legal firm." His smile was brief, self-deprecating. "Glamorous, I know." "Honest work." Evelyn surprised herself by meaning it. Honest and broke are pretty much synonyms. He bent to reload the box, and Evelyn found herself helping despite the stares from passers-by. A cross-capital CEO on her knees on a Manhattan sidewalk, handling someone else's paperwork. When the box was repacked, Caleb straightened and looked at her again. Really looked. You okay? The question caught her off guard. Why wouldn't I be? Because you look like you're about to murder someone, and I'm pretty sure it's not me. His expression was gentle, not mocking. Bad day in the billionaire business? Evelyn should have been offended, should have frozen him out with the look that made board members sweat. Instead, she laughed, sharp and bitter. Something like that. Well, Caleb shifted the box against his hip. Hope it gets better. Thanks for the help, Ms. Cross. He turned to leave, and Evelyn watched him take 3 steps before the words left her mouth. Do you own a suit? Caleb stopped, turned back slowly. What? A suit, formal, black tie, if possible. Evelyn's heart was pounding, which was ridiculous. She'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, but asking a stranger for a favor made her pulse spike. Yeah, somewhere. His eyes narrowed. Why? Evelyn pulled the invitation from her pocket, looked at it, looked at Caleb Warren with his delivery box and his tired eyes and his complete lack of pretense, made a choice. How would you like to make $50,000? Muss. The coffee shop Caleb chose was a hole in the wall in Hell's Kitchen, the kind of place where the espresso was strong enough to strip paint and the tables wobbled. Evelyn sat across from him in a booth that had seen better decades, her driver waiting outside with an expression of profound disapproval. Let me get this straight, Caleb said slowly, his hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee. You want to pay me $50,000 to be your date to your ex-fiance's wedding? Yes. That's it? Just show up and stand next to you? Essentially. Evelyn kept her voice level. One evening, 6 hours, maybe 7. You'll need to be comfortable in formal settings, able to make small talk, and willing to let people assume we're together. Caleb leaned back and the booth creaked. This is insane. It's practical. He stopped, shook his head. Why me? You could hire an actor, a model, someone who actually knows how to work a room. I told you, I need someone real. One. Evelyn met his eyes. Someone who won't perform. Someone who doesn't care about impressing these people. And you think that's me because you looked at me like I was a person, not a net worth. The words came out sharper than she intended. Evelyn forced herself to breathe. I need someone who can stand in a room full of sharks and not pretend to be one. Caleb studied her over the rim of his mug. The silence stretched until Evelyn wanted to fill it with explanations, justifications, anything, but she held still. 50,000, he said finally. That's a life-changing amount of money. I'm aware. For my daughter, for Mia's medical bills. He cut himself off. You read those documents. I glanced at them. Evelyn didn't apologize. Is that why you're considering this? That's the only reason I'm considering this. Caleb set down his mug. My ex-wife is in rehab. Again. I'm barely making rent. And my daughter needs hearing aids we can't afford, let alone the surgery that might actually help her. His voice was flat, factual. So yeah, Ms. Cross, $50,000 sounds like a miracle wrapped in really weird packaging. Evelyn should have felt guilty. Should have offered the money without the condition, done something charitable and uncomplicated. But she'd learned long ago that charity created resentment, while transactions built respect. Then we have a deal? No. Caleb's jaw set. We have conditions. Such as? I won't lie about who I am. If someone asks what I do, I tell them I drive deliveries and raise my kid. I don't pretend to be rich or powerful or anything I'm not. He leaned forward. You want real? Then I stay real. No fake backstory, no performance. Evelyn considered this. Damien would hate it. The Hartford Stones would clutch their pearls. Perfect. Agreed. And I need to know what I'm walking into. Who your ex is, why you're doing this, what you expect from me beyond standing around looking pretty. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Which, for the record, I'm not convinced I can pull off in that crowd. You'll do fine. Evelyn pulled out her phone, opened a photo. This is Damien Caldwell, venture capitalist, old money pretending to be new. We were engaged for 2 years before he decided I was too focused on my career. She said it clinically, like discussing a failed merger. He's marrying Victoria Hartford Stone in 3 weeks at their family estate in Connecticut. It'll be covered by society pages, attended by everyone who matters in our world. Caleb took her phone, studied the picture. Damien in a tuxedo at some gala, his arm around a blonde woman who sparkled with jewelry. He looks like he irons his personality. Evelyn surprised herself by laughing. That's accurate. And you want me there to... What? Make him jealous? Prove you've moved on. I want to not show up alone. The honesty felt like bleeding. I want to walk into that wedding with someone who doesn't need his approval or his world. Someone who... She stopped. Someone who won't fold, Caleb finished quietly. Someone who'll stand there and not blink when they judge him for being less than them. Their eyes met, and Evelyn felt that same strange recognition from the sidewalk. This man understood, not because he'd lived her life, but because he'd lived through his own version of being weighed and dismissed. Yes, she said, exactly that. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. The coffee shop noise swirled around them. The hiss of the espresso machine, fragments of conversation, the scrape of chairs. When he spoke, his voice was careful. What happened to you? Besides the breakup? That's not part of the deal. No, but I'm about to walk into your war zone, so I'd like to know what I'm signing up for. He pushed her phone back across the table. You don't have to tell me, but it might help. Evelyn should have shut him down, should have reminded him this was a transaction, nothing more. Instead, she found herself talking. Damien didn't just leave, he gave interviews. Background quotes to society reporters about how I was married to my work and incapable of real intimacy. Her fingers tightened around her cup. He made it sound like I was defective, like choosing my career over his dinner parties was a character flaw. That's bullshit. The bluntness startled a real laugh from her. Thank you. I'm serious. My ex did the same thing, blamed me for her problems, made me the villain in her story. Turns out addiction doesn't care about whose fault it is. Caleb's expression darkened. Sounds like your ex is just an asshole with better PR. He's certainly that. Evelyn felt something loosen in her chest. So, conditions accepted? One more, Caleb met her eyes. After this is done, after the wedding, we're square. You don't owe me anything. I don't owe you anything. Clean break. It should have been easy to agree. This was temporary, a single night, nothing more. But the words stuck in Evelyn's throat. Why? Because $50,000 is enough to change my life, but not enough to sell it. His voice was gentle but firm. I won't become someone's project or charity case. We do this thing, you write the check, and we both walk away. Deal? Evelyn extended her hand across the wobbling table. Deal. Caleb's palm was warm and calloused against hers. The handshake lasted a moment too long, or maybe Evelyn just noticed it more than she should have. When do we start? He asked. Tomorrow. My office, 9 a.m. We have 3 weeks to make you ready for the Hartford Stone estate. Evelyn stood, and immediately the coffee shop felt smaller. Don't be late. Yes, ma'am. The hint of humor in his voice made it not quite mockery. As Evelyn walked to the door, she heard him call out, Hey, Ms. Cross! She turned. Caleb was still in the booth, his coffee mug raised in a slight salute. For what it's worth, I think your ex is an idiot. Evelyn didn't smile. She'd forgotten how. But something in her face must have shifted. For what it's worth, Mr. Warren? So was mine. Outside, her driver opened the door without comment. As the car pulled away from the curb, Evelyn caught a glimpse of Caleb through the coffee shop window. He was staring at his phone, probably already calculating how to spend money he hadn't earned yet, and she felt the first flicker of something that might have been hope, or regret. She'd find out soon enough. Nuts. Caleb made it home an hour later than promised, his mind still spinning. $50,000. The number felt obscene, impossible, like something from a dream he'd wake up from any minute. Mrs. Chen met him at the apartment door, Mia asleep against her shoulder. Long day? The elderly woman whispered in her accented English. You have no idea. Caleb took his daughter carefully, felt her warm weight settle against his chest. Mia's hearing aids were out, sitting in their case on Mrs. Chen's kitchen counter. Without them, she was in her own silent world, vulnerable and small. Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'd manage. You always do. Mrs. Chen patted his arm. She ate dinner, did her homework. Smart girl, your Mia. Too smart for her own good sometimes. Caleb managed a real smile. What do I owe you for this week? We'll talk Friday. You need rest, Caleb. You look like death. Flatterer? But he didn't argue as he carried Mia across the hall to their apartment. Inside, everything was exactly as he'd left it. Small, clean, carefully maintained. The living room doubled as his bedroom, his mattress folded against the wall during the day. Mia's room was barely big enough for her twin bed and dresser, but he'd painted it her favorite color, hung glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Made it hers. He tucked her into bed, smoothed her dark hair back from her face. She stirred, cracked one eye open. Daddy? Right here, sweetheart. He signed it automatically, even though she couldn't see clearly in the dark. Love you. Her voice was slightly too loud, the way it always was when she couldn't hear herself. Love you more. Caleb kissed her forehead and waited until her breathing evened before leaving the room. In the tiny kitchen, he made instant ramen because it was cheap and fast. While it cooked, he pulled out his phone and Googled Evelyn Cross. The search results were immediate and overwhelming. Cross Capital, Forbes 500. Youngest female CEO in finance. Photos of Evelyn at galas, at conferences, always alone or with business associates, never quite smiling. Articles analyzing her management style, her ice queen reputation, her meteoric rise after her father stepped back from day-to-day operations. Then he found the engagement announcement from 3 years ago. Evelyn and Damien Caldwell, looking like they'd been photoshopped into each other's lives. The breakup coverage was more subtle, carefully worded society column pieces about mutual decisions and diverging paths. Caleb read between the lines, saw what Evelyn had told him confirmed in print. Damien's subtle campaign to paint her as cold, unfeeling, too ambitious, the kind of character assassination that stuck because it confirmed what people already wanted to believe about successful women. Asshole, he muttered. His ramen boiled over. Caleb swore, turned down the heat, and forced himself to stop researching. He had 3 weeks to prepare for a world he'd left behind 5 years ago. 3 weeks to remember how to stand in a room full of money and power and not feel like an imposter. Except he wasn't an imposter. He'd been one of them once, built something from nothing, attracted investors, made Forbes' 30 under 30 list. He'd been Caleb Warren, CEO, before he was Caleb Warren, delivery driver and single dad. He'd also been naive enough to trust the wrong people. Caleb ate his ramen standing at the counter, thinking about acquisition contracts and shell companies and lawyers who'd smiled while they gutted his life's work. The company that bought him out had been a subsidiary of something bigger, and that something had connections to... He stopped himself. Ancient history. Water under a burned bridge. It didn't matter anymore. Except $50,000 mattered. Mia's hearing aids mattered. And maybe, just maybe, standing in a room full of sharks and refusing to pretend to be one would feel like the first honest thing he'd done in years. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Evelyn Cross, my office tomorrow, 9 a.m. Address below. Don't wear the jacket you had on today. Caleb looked down at his worn delivery company windbreaker and laughed. Yes, ma'am, he typed back. Any other fashion advice? The response came almost immediately. Be yourself, just the version that owns an iron. He was still smiling when he fell asleep on his mattress on the living room floor, dreaming of numbers with too many zeros and a woman with gray eyes who looked at him like he was a person instead of a problem. Evelyn's office at 9 a.m. was a study in controlled chaos. Caleb stepped off the elevator to find a reception area that probably cost more than his annual salary, all minimalist furniture and abstract art. The receptionist, a young woman with perfect hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes, looked him up and down with barely concealed doubt. I'm here to see Ms. Cross, Caleb said, fighting the urge to check if his shirt was tucked in. He'd ironed it twice. Name? Caleb Warren. The receptionist's fingers flew over her keyboard. Her eyebrows rose fractionally. Go right in. Last door at the end. The walk down the hallway felt like running a gauntlet. Glass-walled offices on either side, full of people in suits who looked up as he passed. Caleb kept his eyes forward, his shoulders back. You belong here, he told himself. You used to belong in places like this. Evelyn's door was open. She stood at her desk, phone to her ear, and gestured him in without looking up. I don't care about the optics, Richard. The Meridian deal is structured exactly how I want it. If they can't accept our terms, they can find another capital firm. She paused. Because I said so. That's why. She ended the call and finally looked at Caleb. Today her suit was charcoal, her hair down instead of pulled back. It softened her face, made her look almost approachable. Almost. You're on time, she said. Good. Military habit. The lie came easy. Caleb had never served, but people rarely questioned it. Sit. Evelyn gestured to the chair across from her desk. We need to establish parameters. For the next hour, she laid out the plan with the precision of a military operation. The wedding was in 3 weeks. Between now and then, they had fittings, etiquette briefings, and what Evelyn called socialization. Socialization? Caleb repeated. You need to be comfortable in these environments. Dinners, galas, the occasional cocktail hour. I can't have you freezing up when someone asks about wine pairings or your thoughts on the latest Fed decision. She pulled out a tablet, started making notes. We'll start with the basics and work up. I know how to use a fork, Ms. Cross. It's Evelyn when we're alone, and I'm sure you do. But do you know which fork? She didn't wait for an answer. You'll also need to learn how to deflect personal questions without seeming evasive, how to read a room, and how to look comfortable standing next to me while people photograph us. Caleb felt his temper stir. You want me to be real, but you also want me to perform. Which is it? Evelyn's expression didn't change. I want you to be yourself, just prepared. There's a difference between performing and being equipped. She set down the tablet. You're a delivery driver and a single father. Those are facts. How you present those facts matters. So you're ashamed of what I do? No. The word was sharp. I'm protecting you from people who will try to use it against you, against us. She leaned back. Damien's crowd will look for any excuse to dismiss you. I'm making sure they can't. Caleb processed this, nodded slowly. Okay, but I'm not changing who I am. I'm not asking you to. Evelyn's voice softened. I'm asking you to be strategic about it. Fine. When do we start? Now. She stood, grabbed her coat. We have a fitting at noon, dinner reservations at 8. In between, you're going to tell me about yourself. Real information, not a resume. I need to know who you are if we're going to make this believable. Believable how? I thought this was just arm candy duty. Evelyn paused at the door. It is. But people will ask questions. They'll want to know how we met, how long we've been together, whether I'm serious about you. Her eyes met his. We need our stories straight. So we're building a lie. We're building a narrative. There's a difference. Caleb followed her to the elevator, wondering what the hell he'd gotten himself into. This wasn't just a date to a wedding. This was infiltration, performance, psychological warfare dressed up in formal wear. And he'd agreed to it for $50,000. In the elevator, descending toward the street, Evelyn said quietly, You can still back out. I'll pay you for your time today, and we'll call it even. Caleb looked at her, really looked. Saw past the perfect suit and controlled expression to the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers gripped her phone too tight. Saw someone who was terrified of being humiliated again, but too proud to admit it. I'm not backing out, he said. But you're buying lunch. The corner of her mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. Deal. The suit fitting was an education in discomfort. The tailor, an elderly Italian man named Enzo, who seemed personally offended by Caleb's current wardrobe, measured him with the intensity of a surgeon. Evelyn sat in a velvet chair nearby, scrolling through her phone, but occasionally offering opinions. The shoulders need to be sharper, she said without looking up. And take in the waist more. Enzo hummed agreement, pins bristling from his mouth as he adjusted fabric. Caleb stood very still on the platform, trying not to feel like a mannequin. This is a Tom Ford, Enzo said reverently, smoothing the jacket. Beautiful fabric, Italian wool, hand-stitched. You take care of this suit, it lasts lifetime. It costs more than my car, Caleb muttered. Your car, Evelyn said dryly, is held together with hope and bad decisions. This suit is an investment. In what? One night at a wedding. In looking like you belong. She finally glanced up. How does it feel? Caleb caught his reflection in the three-way mirror and barely recognized himself. The suit transformed him, made him look like the man he used to be. Sharp, powerful, dangerous even. It feels like a costume. Good, that's what we're going for. Evelyn stood, walked over to him. She adjusted his collar with practiced fingers, and Caleb caught a whiff of her perfume, something subtle and expensive. You wear power like you've worn it before, she said quietly, echoing something she'd noticed earlier. Why? Told you. Military. You're lying. Her eyes met his in the mirror. I don't care about your past, Caleb, but I need to know if there are surprises waiting. The truth sat on Caleb's tongue, heavy and complicated. He'd signed NDAs, settlement agreements, walked away from his old life with nothing but Mia and his pride. Telling Evelyn meant opening doors he'd nailed shut, but she was looking at him with those sharp gray eyes, and he was tired of lying. I used to run a tech startup, he said. Built it from nothing, got investors, made Forbes 30 under 30. 5 years ago, a bigger company acquired us. Standard deal, or so I thought. He felt Enzo's hands pause on his shoulders. Turned out the acquisition was a trap. They gutted the company, fired everyone, and buried the tech. I tried to fight it, but the contracts were airtight. Lost everything. Evelyn's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. What was the company called? Helix Systems. We did data analytics for supply chain optimization. He laughed bitterly. Probably doesn't sound like much, but we were onto something real. Had contracts with 3 Fortune 500s, another dozen in the pipeline. And the company that acquired you? TechCore Solutions, subsidiary of some holding company. I never found out who really owned it. Caleb met her eyes. Doesn't matter now. Ancient history. But Evelyn's face had gone very still. TechCore Solutions. You know them? She stepped back. I need to make a call. Enzo, we're done here. Send the bill to my office. Before Caleb could respond, she was gone, striding toward the shop's exit with her phone already at her ear. Enzo watched her go, then looked at Caleb with sympathetic eyes. Women, he said philosophically, removing the pins. Always mysterious. But Caleb didn't think mystery was the right word for whatever had just happened. Evelyn hadn't looked mysterious. She'd looked stricken. She didn't return his calls for the rest of the day. Caleb picked up Mia from school, made dinner, helped with homework, and tried not to obsess over Evelyn's sudden disappearance. Maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe the whole thing was off. Maybe... His phone rang at 9 p.m. after Mia was asleep. Evelyn's name on the screen. We need to meet, she said without preamble. Tonight. It's 9 o'clock. I have a kid. Tomorrow morning then, same coffee shop as before, 7 a.m. Her voice was tight. It's important, Caleb. What's going on? Just be there, please. She ended the call before he could argue. Caleb stared at his phone, dread pooling in his stomach. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. He didn't sleep well. When morning came, he left Mia with Mrs. Chen and made his way to Hell's Kitchen through pre-dawn streets. Evelyn was already there when he arrived, sitting in the same booth, looking like she hadn't slept either. Thanks for coming, she said as he slid in across from her. Didn't seem like I had a choice. Caleb studied her face. What happened? Evelyn pulled out her laptop, turned it so he could see the screen. Financial documents, corporate filings, shell company records. I spent all night digging through archives. TechCore Solutions, the The company that acquired Helix Systems was owned by a holding company called Meridian Ventures. Okay, Caleb didn't see where this was going. Meridian Ventures was, at that time, a subsidiary of Cross Holdings. She met his eyes. My family's company. My father's company. The words hit like a physical blow. Caleb sat back, the booth suddenly too small. What? The acquisition that destroyed your company? It was funded with cross money, approved by my father's board. Evelyn's voice was steady, but her hand shook. I didn't know. I was in London at the time running our European operations, but that doesn't change the facts. Caleb's mind reeled. 5 years of anger, of rebuilding, of swallowing bitterness and moving forward. And all along, it had been her family's money that gutted him. There's more, Evelyn continued. I found payment records. 2 weeks after the acquisition finalized, there was a wire transfer to a Shell account, $50,000. She turned the laptop to show him. I think it was hush money, to keep you from digging deeper. I never got any money. I know. The account wasn't in your name. She zoomed in on the document. It was in Rachel Warren's name, your ex-wife. The coffee shop tilted. Caleb gripped the edge of the table. That's not possible. I have the records right here. Transfer from Cross Holdings to an account opened 2 weeks before the acquisition closed. $50,000 deposited and withdrawn in cash the same day. Evelyn's voice was gentle. I'm sorry, Caleb. I think your ex took a payoff to keep you quiet. Caleb remembered that time. Rachel's sudden windfall from an aunt he'd never heard of. How quickly it disappeared into drugs and lawyers and finally rehab. How she'd insisted the money was none of his business when he asked. She'd sold him out, sold out their daughter's future for pills and powder. I need air. He stood too fast, bumped the table. His coffee sloshed. Caleb, don't. He held up a hand. Just give me a minute. Outside, the morning was cold and bright. Caleb walked to the corner, braced himself against a building, and tried to breathe. His entire world was reframing itself, past and present colliding in ways he couldn't process. Evelyn's family had destroyed his company. His ex-wife had taken money to keep him quiet. And the woman offering him $50,000, the exact amount Rachel had betrayed him for, was connected to all of it. He should walk away. Should tell Evelyn Cross to find another date, another Mark, another person to parade through her revenge fantasy. Should protect what was left of his dignity and go home to Mia. But $50,000 would change everything for his daughter. And Evelyn hadn't known, hadn't been part of it. Or had she? Caleb turned back to the coffee shop. Through the window, he could see Evelyn still in the booth, her face in her hands. She looked smaller somehow, defeated in a way that didn't match the Ice Queen CEO persona. He went back inside. Did you know? He asked without sitting. Before yesterday, did you know about any of this? Evelyn looked up. No, I swear to you, Caleb, I had no idea until you mentioned TechCore. Her eyes were red-rimmed. But that doesn't make it okay. My father's company still did this. My family's money still destroyed yours. What are you going to do about it? I don't know. She laughed bitterly. Confront my father, I guess. Demand answers. Not that it'll change anything. Caleb sat down slowly. The deal. The $50,000. Is that guilt money? No. Evelyn's voice was fierce. That was real. That was before I knew. But I understand if you want to walk away. If you can't be in the same room as me, knowing what you know now. He should walk away. Every logical bone in his body screamed at him to leave, to protect himself, to not get tangled up with the family that had already gutted him once. But when he looked at Evelyn, he didn't see William Cross's daughter. He saw someone who'd been lied to, used, betrayed by people she should have been able to trust. Someone who looked at him and saw a person, not a problem. Someone who reminded him, uncomfortably, of himself. I'm not walking away, Caleb heard himself say. But the deal changes. How? You want me at that wedding? You want me to stand there and not blink while your ex watches? Fine, I'll do it. He leaned forward. But when this is over, you help me figure out what really happened with Helix. You use your resources, your connections, your family name, and you help me get answers. Real answers. Evelyn's eyes widened. Caleb, that could take months, years even, and there's no guarantee. That's the deal. Take it or leave it. She studied him for a long moment. Then she extended her hand across the table. Deal. This handshake felt different from the first one, more like a pact than a transaction, more like the beginning of something neither of them understood yet. We start prep tomorrow, Evelyn said, releasing his hand. But today, I need to have a conversation with my father. Want backup? From you? She almost smiled. That would certainly make an impression. I'm serious. If you're walking into a fight, you shouldn't do it alone. Something shifted in Evelyn's expression, surprise maybe, or gratitude. You barely know me. I know enough. Caleb stood. Besides, I kind of want to look William Cross in the eye. That might be the worst idea you've ever had. Probably. He offered his hand to help her up. But you're going anyway, right? Evelyn took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. Right. Then let's go. They left the coffee shop together, stepping into morning sunshine that felt too bright for the darkness they were walking toward. In 3 weeks, they'd stand together at Damien Caldwell's wedding, performing a fiction for cameras and society pages. But right now, walking toward the Cross Holdings tower with shoulders squared and jaws set, they weren't performing at all. They were just two people who'd been betrayed by their pasts, refusing to let those pasts win. And that, Caleb thought, was the most honest thing he'd done in 5 years. The elevator ride to William Cross's executive floor felt like ascending toward a reckoning. Evelyn stood rigid beside Caleb, her finger hovering over the button marked P for Penthouse Suite. The offices of Cross Holdings occupied the top 3 floors of the building. Her father's empire spread across glass and steel like a monument to ambition. Last chance to reconsider, she said without looking at him. Caleb watched the numbers climb. You trying to protect me or yourself? Both, maybe. The elevator chimed at floor 47. My father doesn't lose arguments gracefully. Neither do I. The doors opened onto a reception area that made Evelyn's office look modest. Marble floors, original artwork that probably cost more than most houses, and a receptionist who looked like she'd been hired to intimidate visiting dignitaries. The woman's eyes widened fractionally at the sight of Evelyn. Ms. Cross, I wasn't informed you were coming. Is he in? Evelyn strode past without waiting for an answer. Yes, but he's on a call with Tokyo. He'll make time. Evelyn pushed through the heavy oak doors to her father's office, and Caleb followed before security could materialize. William Cross sat behind a desk the size of a small boat, phone pressed to his ear, eyes narrowing as his daughter entered uninvited. He was 72 but looked a decade younger, all silver hair and tailored menace, the kind of man who'd built empires by stepping on throats and calling it progress. I'll call you back, he said into the phone, his gaze sliding to Caleb. We have a situation. He ended the call with deliberate slowness, set the phone down, folded his hands. Evelyn, what an unexpected pleasure. The words dripped with anything but pleasure. And you've brought a guest. This is Caleb Warren, Evelyn said, her voice ice cold. Does that name mean anything to you? William's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or calculation. Should it? Helix Systems, Tech Core Solutions, Meridian Ventures. Evelyn pulled a folder from her bag, dropped it on his desk. Ring any bells? William opened the folder, scanned the contents without visible reaction. When he looked up, his face was carved from stone. You went through sealed corporate records. I went through my company's records. Cross Holdings may have your name on the door, but I run operations now. Evelyn leaned forward, palms flat on his desk. Tell me you didn't know. Tell me this was some rogue subsidiary acting without authorization. I don't owe you explanations about business decisions made 5 years ago. This wasn't business. This was theft. Her voice cracked like a whip. They bought Caleb's company specifically to bury it, fired everyone, shelved the technology, destroyed 5 years of work. And then someone in our organization paid his ex-wife $50,000 to keep him quiet. William's gaze shifted to Caleb for the first time, really looked at him. Mr. Warren, I assume you're here for closure, Or perhaps revenge? His tone suggested both were equally futile. Caleb kept his voice level. I'm here for the truth. Why Helix? We were small, barely profitable. Why go through the trouble of acquiring us just to shut us down? Because you were developing technology that would have disrupted 3 of our major investments. William said it like he was discussing the weather. Your supply chain analytics would have made half the logistics companies we owned obsolete. So we eliminated the threat. It's called strategic acquisition. It's called corporate murder, Caleb shot back. It's called capitalism, son. William leaned back in his chair. You built something valuable. We bought it at fair market price. What we did with it afterward was our prerogative. If you didn't want to sell, you shouldn't have signed. The contracts were fraud. Your lawyers lied about intent. Prove it. William smiled without warmth. Oh wait, you can't, because you signed an NDA and accepted a settlement. So unless you want to spend the next decade in court fighting an army of attorneys, I suggest you move on with your life. Evelyn's hands clenched into fists. What about the payment to Rachel Warren? That wasn't part of any legitimate settlement. That was insurance. Your Mr. Warren here was making noise about regulatory complaints, talking to journalists. We made the problem go away. William's eyes were flat, reptilian. His ex-wife was more than happy to help. Addiction makes people very cooperative when properly motivated. Caleb felt rage flood through him, hot and blinding. This man, this monster in a $1,000 suit, had destroyed his company, bribed his wife, and was sitting here discussing it like a quarterly earnings report. You're proud of this, Caleb said, his voice deadly quiet. You actually think you did nothing wrong. I did what was necessary to protect my interests. Your company was collateral damage. Nothing personal, Mr. Warren. William turned back to Evelyn. Now, if this dramatic scene is finished, I have actual work to do. I'm calling the board, Evelyn said. I'm going to tell them everything. The shell companies, the fraudulent acquisition, the payments. You'll do no such thing. William stood, and despite his age, he moved like a predator. That board answers to me. They've answered to me for 40 years. You think they'll choose you over the man who made them all rich? He walked around the desk, stopped inches from his daughter. You're good at your job, Evelyn. I'll give you that. But you're not essential. Keep pushing this, and I'll have you removed, replaced, erased. You can't. I can. I will. His voice dropped to a whisper. You think you run Cross Holdings? You manage it. I built it, and I can tear down anything you've built just as easily. Evelyn's face had gone pale, but she didn't step back. Then do it. Call the board. Tell them I'm threatening to expose corporate fraud and see how they react. Because I'm not bluffing, Father. I'll burn this company to the ground before I let it keep operating like this. The silence stretched between them, father and daughter locked in a battle that had probably been building for years. Caleb watched, feeling like an intruder in a war zone. Finally, William smiled. You're more like me than you want to admit. I'm nothing like you. Keep telling yourself that. He returned to his desk, sat down, dismissed them both with his posture. This conversation is over. Get out of my office. Evelyn didn't move. I'm not done. Yes, you are. Because if you push this, I'll make sure Mr. Warren's custody situation becomes very public. Single father, unstable income, accepting large sums from wealthy women. I wonder what a family court judge would make of that. William's smile was a knife. Play your cards right, Evelyn, and walk away, or I'll destroy both of you. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Caleb felt his chest tighten. Mia. This bastard was threatening Mia. Don't, Caleb said, stepping forward. Don't you dare bring my daughter into this. Then take your wounded pride and leave. Both of you. William waved his hand dismissively. This is boring me. Evelyn grabbed Caleb's arm before he could do something stupid. Her fingers dug in hard enough to bruise. Come on, we're leaving. Like hell. Now, Caleb. She pulled him toward the door, her face a mask. This isn't over, Father. Not even close. It never is with you, William called after them. You always did have trouble knowing when you were beaten. They made it to the elevator before Caleb exploded. We can't just let him... Stop. Evelyn jabbed the button repeatedly. Not here, not where he can hear us. The elevator arrived. They stepped in. The doors closed, and Evelyn sagged against the wall like someone had cut her strings. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I thought if I confronted him, if I had proof, he'd—" She laughed bitterly. "I don't know what I thought, that he'd suddenly develop a conscience?" Caleb watched her crumble and felt his anger shift targets. Not at Evelyn. At the system that let men like William Cross destroy lives and call it business. "He threatened Mia. I know. If he goes after my daughter, I'll keep—" "He won't." Evelyn straightened and the Ice Queen mask slipped back into place. "He was bluffing, trying to scare us into backing down." "How do you know?" "Because going after your custody would require him to admit Cross Holdings paid off your ex-wife. It would expose exactly what we're threatening to expose." She pulled out her phone, started typing. "He's counting on us being too afraid to push back. That's his whole strategy, intimidation and isolation." The elevator descended in silence. Caleb's mind raced through scenarios, contingencies, ways to protect Mia if William Cross decided to make good on his threat. He was so focused on his daughter that he almost missed what Evelyn said next. "I'm going to the SEC." Caleb's head snapped up. "What?" "The Securities and Exchange Commission. I'm filing a complaint about Cross Holdings acquisition practices. Fraudulent intent, shell company manipulation, all of it." Her fingers flew across her phone screen. "It'll take months to investigate, maybe years, but it'll force everything into the open. That'll destroy your company. Parts of it, yes, the parts that deserve to be destroyed." Evelyn met his eyes. "You asked what I was going to do about this. That's my answer. I'm choosing to do the right thing, even if it costs me everything." The elevator opened onto the lobby. They walked out into morning sunshine that felt wrong somehow, too bright for the darkness they'd just witnessed. Evelyn's driver pulled up immediately, but she waved him off. "I need to walk," she said. "Clear my head. Figure out my next move." "Your next move is going to the feds?" Caleb fell into step beside her. "Evelyn, think about this. Your father will fight back. He'll use every resource he has. Let him." She strode down the sidewalk like she was marching into battle. "I'm tired of being afraid of him, tired of protecting a legacy built on other people's ruins." She stopped suddenly, turned to face Caleb. "I can't give you back what you lost. I can't undo 5 years of struggle or erase what my family's company did to yours, but I can make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." Caleb studied her face, saw determination and fear in equal measure. "This is going to get ugly." "It already is ugly. I'm just done pretending it's not." She started walking again. "The wedding is still in 2.5 weeks. I still need you there, unless you want out now that you know the whole truth." "I gave you my word." "Words are cheap. My father proved that today." "Not mine." Caleb caught her arm, made her stop. "I said I'd be there, and I will be. Not for the money anymore. For you. Because you're trying to do the right thing even though it's terrifying." He paused. "And because watching you walk into that wedding after filing federal complaints against your own family, that's going to be one hell of a statement." Evelyn's laugh was shaky. "You have a strange definition of support." "I have a functional definition of revenge," he smiled grimly. "Your ex wanted to watch you lose. Instead, he's going to watch you become the most dangerous person in the room." Something shifted in Evelyn's expression. The fear didn't disappear, but it got pushed aside by something harder, more focused. "Okay, we do this, but we do it right. No half measures, no backing down when it gets difficult." "Agreed. And we start with making you ready for that wedding. Because when we walk in, you're not going to look like arm candy or a hired date. You're going to look like someone who belongs at my side." "I'm a single dad who drives a rust bucket. How exactly?" "By being yourself." Evelyn started walking again, purpose in every step. "By standing in a room full of sharks and refusing to pretend to be one. That's what you said, right? That's what I hired you for." "Technically, you hired me before you knew your family destroyed my life." "Then consider this an upgrade. I'm hiring you to help me destroy them back." She pulled out her phone. "We have 2.5 weeks. Let's make them count." Over the next 10 days, Caleb got a crash course in Evelyn Cross's world and learned that preparing for a wedding was code for training for psychological warfare. The first dinner was at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Tribeca. Evelyn arrived looking like she'd stepped off a magazine cover, all emerald silk and perfect makeup. Caleb wore his new suit and felt like a fraud. "Relax," she said as they were seated. "You look like you're about to face a firing squad." That would be less intimidating than this menu. Caleb stared at descriptions that might as well have been in another language. What the hell is a foam? Overpriced air? Evelyn ordered wine without looking at the list. Rule 1. When you don't know something, don't pretend. Ask. People respect curiosity more than fake expertise. Even in this crowd? Especially in this crowd. Half of them are pretending too, they're just better at it. She leaned back as the sommelier poured wine. "Try it. Tell me what you think." Caleb sipped. It tasted like wine. Expensive wine, probably, but wine. "It's good?" "Very diplomatic." Evelyn's lips twitched. "It's a 2015 Burgundy, specifically chosen to pair with the duck confit you're going to order, but it's good works too." "You're making fun of me. I'm teaching you. There's a difference." She set down her glass. Damien's crowd will try to make you feel small by dropping names, brands, obscure references. Your job is to not care, to make it clear that your value isn't tied to knowing which vineyard produced the best Pinot in 2015. "What is my value tied to?" Evelyn met his eyes. "Being real in a room full of people who've forgotten how." They talked through dinner about everything and nothing. Evelyn asked about Mia, her favorite foods, her progress with sign language, whether the new hearing aids were helping. Caleb found himself describing his daughter's laugh, the way she signed "I love you" before bed, how she'd memorized every constellation he'd taught her. "You're a good father," Evelyn said quietly. "I'm a broke father who can barely afford her medical care." "That doesn't make you less good. It makes you human." She pushed food around her plate. "My father gave me everything money could buy. Private schools, tutors, a trust fund that would have set me up for life, but he never asked what I wanted. Never learned to sign "I love you" in any language. Is that why you're doing this? Going after cross holdings? Partly. Evelyn set down her fork. But mostly because I looked at you in that coffee shop and saw what my family's business does to real people, and I realized I'd been complicit by staying silent. You didn't know. I should have. I run that company. I sign off on acquisitions, approve budgets, sit in board meetings. I should have asked harder questions. Her voice was tight. I should have been better. Caleb reached across the table, covered her hand with his. The touch surprised them both. You're asking now? That counts. Evelyn stared at their hands for a long moment before pulling away. We should go. You have an early shift tomorrow, and I have meetings all day. But as they left the restaurant, she stumbled on the steps, her heel catching on uneven pavement. Caleb caught her automatically, his arm around her waist, and for 3 heartbeats they stood frozen, close enough that he could see gold flecks in her gray eyes, smell her perfume, feel her breath against his collar. Careful, he said, not letting go. Always. But her voice wavered. They separated slowly. Evelyn smoothed her dress, rebuilt her armor. Thank you. For catching you or for coming to dinner? Both, neither. I don't know. She looked at him with something that might have been longing or might have been fear. This is getting complicated. It was always complicated. No. Before it was transactional. Now it's... She trailed off. Real? Caleb offered. Evelyn's smile was sad. That's the problem. The second dinner was at her penthouse, and Caleb almost turned around when he saw the address. Her building was the kind of place that had a concierge who looked like he earned more than Caleb's annual salary. The elevator required a key. The hallway on the 42nd floor had exactly 2 doors. Evelyn answered in jeans and a sweater, barefoot, looking more human than he'd ever seen her. Come in, I'm cooking. You cook? Don't sound so surprised. I'm full of hidden talents. She led him through a space that was all windows and minimalist furniture into a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. I thought we could skip the performance tonight. Just practice being comfortable together. By cooking? By existing in the same space without armor. She handed him a cutting board and vegetables. You chop, I'll handle the stove. and we'll talk like actual people instead of CEO and hired help." They fell into an easy rhythm. Caleb chopped while Evelyn explained what she was making, something with pasta and fresh herbs that smelled incredible. They talked about ordinary things: his childhood in Ohio, her boarding school years in Connecticut, his failed marriage, her failed engagement, the ways they'd both learned to protect themselves from being hurt again. "I loved him," Evelyn said suddenly, stirring sauce. "Damien, or I thought I did. Looking back, I'm not sure I knew what love was supposed to feel like." "What did it feel like with him?" "Safe, predictable, like checking a box on my life plan." She tasted the sauce, added salt. "He fit into my world perfectly. Same background, same education, same understanding of how things worked. I thought that was enough. But it wasn't. No. Because he wanted me to be smaller, to care less about work, to prioritize his career over mine, to become the kind of wife who hosts dinner parties and looks good in photos." She turned off the stove. "And when I couldn't do that, he made me feel broken for wanting more." Caleb set down the knife. "You're not broken for wanting more. Or you're human." Tell that to the tabloids. They love Damien's narrative. Ice Queen CEO too cold for love. She laughed bitterly. Maybe they're right. They're not. He moved closer without thinking about it. "You're not cold. You're careful. There's a difference." Evelyn looked up at him, and the kitchen suddenly felt smaller, warmer, dangerous. "Caleb, I know. This is complicated. You said that already." He didn't step back. "But for the record, Damien Caldwell is an idiot, and anyone who thinks you're cold hasn't been paying attention." Her breath caught. For a moment, Caleb thought she might close the distance between them, thought he might do it himself. But then her phone rang, shattering the moment. She answered without looking away from him. "Yes?" A pause. "When?" Another pause, longer. "I understand. Thank you for the warning." She ended the call. Her face had gone pale. "What happened?" Caleb asked. "That was my lawyer. My father's making his move." She set down the phone with shaking hands. "He's calling a board meeting for next week. He's going to try to have me removed as CEO." "Can he do that?" "If he has the votes, yes. And he's been working the board for 40 years. They're loyal to him, not me." She braced herself against the counter. "I knew this was coming. I just thought I'd have more time to prepare." Caleb watched her process the information, saw the moment she shifted from shock to strategy. This was who Evelyn Cross was at her core, not the Ice Queen or the wounded ex-fiancé, but a fighter who refused to stay down. "What do you need?" he asked. "A miracle." She straightened. "Or a very good lawyer and every favor I've ever earned. You'll get through this." "You don't know that." "No, but I know you." He caught her hand, squeezed once. "And I know you don't quit when things get hard. You double down." Evelyn's eyes shone with something that might have been tears, but she blinked them back. "Stay for dinner? I don't want to be alone right now." "Of course." They ate at her dining table with the city spread out below them like a carpet of lights. The food was good, the conversation careful, both of them dancing around the thing building between them. When Caleb finally left at midnight, Evelyn walked him to the door. "Thank you," she said, "for being here, for not running when things got messy." "Where would I run to? You still owe me a wedding date." He smiled. "Besides, I kind of want to see how this story ends." "Me too." She hesitated, then leaned up and kissed his cheek. Quick, light, gone, before he could respond. "Good night, Caleb." He touched the spot where her lips had been. "Good night, Evelyn." The elevator ride down felt like descending from a dream. Caleb's phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Chen. "Mia's fine. Take your time." He typed back thanks and stepped out into the cool night air. His van felt like returning to reality after a fantasy. Rust and duct tape instead of marble and glass. But as he drove through empty streets toward Queens, Caleb realized he didn't want to choose between those worlds anymore. He wanted to figure out how to exist in both. How to be the man who wore Tom Ford suits to weddings and the dad who made breakfast in a cramped kitchen. How to stand beside Evelyn Cross and not lose himself in the process. The question was whether that was even possible, or if he was setting himself up for another kind of destruction entirely. The days blurred together after that. Caleb juggled delivery shifts and etiquette lessons, Mia's bedtime routine, and late-night strategy sessions with Evelyn. They practiced walking into rooms together, learned each other's rhythms, built a fiction so convincing that sometimes Caleb forgot it wasn't real. The night before the board meeting, Evelyn called him at 2 a.m. "I can't sleep," she said without preamble. "I keep running scenarios, trying to figure out which board members might vote with me. The numbers don't look good." "You sound like you're planning a hostile takeover." "I'm planning survival." Her voice was raw. "If my father gets me removed, he'll bury the SEC complaint, bury the truth about Helix and every other company they've destroyed. Everything we've worked for will be for nothing." Caleb sat up in bed, rubbed his eyes. Across the room, Mia slept soundly, her breathing soft and even. "What's the worst-case scenario?" "I lose my job, my reputation, and any leverage to change how Cross Holdings operates. My father wins. Again." She was quiet for a moment. "And I'll have dragged you into this mess for nothing." "Stop that! You didn't drag me anywhere I didn't choose to go." He stood, moved to the window. Outside, Queens slept in pools of streetlight. "What's the best-case scenario?" "I convince enough board members that exposing the truth is better than covering it up. That integrity matters more than short-term profits." She laughed bitterly. "Which sounds naive even saying it out loud." "It's not naive. It's optimistic. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because right now it feels like the same thing." Caleb pressed his forehead against the cool glass. "When I lost Helix, I thought my life was over. Thought I'd never build anything meaningful again. And maybe I won't, not the way I did before. But I built something with Mia. Something that matters more than any company." He paused. "What I'm saying is, even if you lose the board vote, you're not losing everything. You're gaining something too." "What?" "The knowledge that you tried, that you stood up and fought instead of staying silent." He smiled even though she couldn't see it. "And for what it's worth, I'll be there. In the gallery or the hallway or wherever they let civilians watch board meetings. You won't be alone." Evelyn's breath hitched. "You can't. You have work, and Mia, Mrs. Chen owes me about 1,000 favors. She'll watch Mia." He made the decision as he said it. "I'm coming. End of discussion." "Caleb, end of discussion." He softened his tone. "Get some sleep, Evelyn. You need to be sharp tomorrow." "Thank you." Her voice was small. "For everything." "Thank me by winning." She hung up without saying goodbye. Caleb stood at the window for a long time, watching the city breathe, wondering what the hell he was doing. This wasn't his fight, wasn't his company or his board or his billion-dollar legacy on the line. But it was Evelyn. And somewhere between that first collision on a Manhattan sidewalk and tonight's 2 a.m. phone call, she'd stopped being a transaction and become something else entirely. Something that scared him more than any corporate warfare ever could. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. in Cross Holdings' main conference room. Caleb showed up at 1:30 wearing his Tom Ford suit, feeling like a soldier heading into battle without weapons or training. The executive floor was packed with lawyers, assistants, and people Caleb didn't recognize but who all looked expensive. Evelyn stood near the conference room entrance talking to a woman in a power suit, her face composed but her knuckles white where she gripped her folder. She saw him and went completely still. Then she crossed the hallway in quick strides. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "Moral support." He straightened his tie. "Also, I wanted to see if your suit looks as good as mine. Verdict? Mine's better." Despite everything, she almost smiled. "You're insane." "Probably. But I'm here, and you're not going in there alone." He glanced at the conference room. "How bad is it?" 12 board members. I need 7 votes to maintain my position. Right now I have 4 confirmed, 3 maybes, and 5 definite no's." She took a shaky breath. "My father's been making calls all week, promising favors, threatening consequences." "And you?" "I've been telling the truth, which apparently is less persuasive than fear." She looked at him with eyes that held too much vulnerability. "I shouldn't have involved you in this." "Too late. I'm involved." Caleb caught her hand, squeezed once. "Go in there and fight. Show them who you are when you're not afraid." "I'm terrified." I know, do it anyway. A door opened. A man in a dark suit called out, Ms. Cross, we're ready for you. Evelyn released Caleb's hand slowly, rebuilt her armor piece by piece until the Ice Queen was back in place. Wait here. This shouldn't take long. She walked into the conference room like she was walking to war. The doors closed behind her with a sound like a tomb sealing. Caleb found a chair in the hallway and settled in to wait. Around him, assistants whispered, lawyers checked phones, the machinery of corporate power ground forward with or without his understanding. He felt like an alien observer, watching rituals he used to know but had forgotten the meaning of. 20 minutes passed. 40. An hour. Finally, the doors opened. Board members filed out in ones and twos, their faces revealing nothing. Caleb stood, searching for Evelyn. She emerged last, walking beside her father. William Cross looked triumphant. Evelyn looked shattered. Caleb's heart sank. No, she couldn't have lost. But then Evelyn looked up, met his eyes, and smiled. Really smiled, bright and fierce and victorious. What happened? He asked as she reached him. I won. The words came out breathless. 7 votes. Exactly 7. I maintain my position as CEO. Relief flooded through him. How? 3 board members changed their votes at the last minute, said they'd rather bet on integrity than cover-up, even if it cost them in the short term. She laughed shakily. I honestly didn't think it would work. William Cross brushed past them without acknowledgement, his face carved from granite. Defeat didn't sit well on him. Good. Evelyn watched her father disappear into the elevator, and her smile faded. This isn't over. He'll regroup, try again, come at me from a different angle. But you won today. That's what matters. Caleb wanted to hug her, to celebrate, to do something that acknowledged the enormity of what just happened. Instead, he settled for touching her shoulder. You stood up to him and won. We won. She covered his hand with hers. I couldn't have done this without you. All I did was show up. That's more than most people do. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. The wedding is in 4 days. Are you ready? Caleb thought about Damien Caldwell and the Hartford Stones, in a room full of people who would judge him for not knowing the right wines or dropping the right names. Thought about standing beside Evelyn while cameras flashed and society pages whispered. Ready as I'll ever be, he said. Then let's make it count. Evelyn's eyes glittered with something dangerous. Let's show them what real partnership looks like. The 4 days between the board meeting and the wedding passed in a strange blur of normalcy and surreal preparation. Caleb picked up Mia from school, made grilled cheese dinners, helped with math homework about fractions that made his head hurt. But in the gaps between ordinary life, he practiced walking into rooms with Evelyn, learned the names of people he'd never meet again, and tried not to think about how natural it felt to have her hand resting in the crook of his arm. The night before the wedding, Mia caught him staring at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie for the 100th time. You look fancy, Daddy, she said, her voice carrying that slight flatness that came without her hearing aids. She'd taken them out for bed, was padding around in her favorite penguin pajamas. Caleb knelt down so they were eye level, signed as he spoke. I have to go to a fancy party tomorrow, for work. Mia's nose wrinkled. Parties are boring. This one definitely will be. He smoothed her hair back. But Mrs. Chen is going to take you to the aquarium while I'm gone. You get to see the penguins. Her face lit up. Mia loved penguins with the kind of fierce devotion only 7-year-olds could manage. Real penguins. The realist. He pulled her into a hug, breathed in the kid smell of her shampoo and innocence. I love you, sweetheart. She pulled back, signed the words with careful precision. I love you too. Then, with the brutal honesty of children, is the fancy party with the pretty lady who came here? Caleb's heart skipped. Evelyn had stopped by 3 days ago to drop off some paperwork, had spent 10 minutes talking to Mia about school and stars and whether penguins could fly if they really tried. His daughter had been fascinated, asking questions in the loud, eager voice she used when she couldn't quite hear herself. Yes, he said carefully, Ms. Cross will be there. She's nice. Her eyes are sad, though. Mia tilted her head. Like yours sometimes. Out of the mouths of babes. Caleb forced a smile. People get sad sometimes. It's okay. You should make her not sad. You're good at that. Mia yawned hugely. You make me not sad when I'm worried about my ears. Caleb tucked her back into bed, kissed her forehead, and left her room with his chest tight. His 7-year-old daughter saw things adults spent years trying to hide, saw through Evelyn's armor and his own careful distance to the truth underneath. They were both lonely people pretending not to be. And somewhere in the past 3 weeks, they'd started pretending together. His phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn. Can't sleep, nervous about tomorrow. Is that stupid? He typed back, not stupid, human. Get some rest. Tomorrow we make them all regret underestimating you. Us, she corrected. We make them regret underestimating us. Caleb stared at that word. Us. Like they were a team. Like this was real instead of an elaborate performance scheduled to end the moment the wedding reception finished. He set his phone down without responding and tried to ignore the voice in his head that whispered he was already in too deep to walk away clean. The morning of the wedding dawned cold and bright, the kind of November day that sliced through inadequate jackets and made New Yorkers walk faster. Evelyn's car arrived at Caleb's apartment at noon precisely, the driver stone-faced and professional as always. Ms. Cross asked me to inform you that she'll meet you at the venue, the driver said as Caleb slid into the back seat. She had some last-minute preparations to handle. What kind of preparations? Caleb asked, suddenly nervous. I believe she said something about making an entrance they'll never forget. The driver's lips twitched. Those were her exact words. The Hartford Stone estate was 2 hours north of the city, tucked into Connecticut hills that probably looked picturesque in summer but now seemed barren and vaguely threatening. The driveway alone was half a mile long, winding through naked trees to a mansion that belonged in a period drama. Caleb counted at least 30 windows on the front facade and felt his stomach drop. Jesus, he muttered. First time at the Hartford estate? The driver asked, pulling into a line of vehicles that made Caleb's van look like a child's toy. First time at any estate. Caleb watched valets in actual uniforms directing traffic. This is insane. Weddings usually are, sir. Just remember to breathe and you'll do fine. Easy for him to say. He wasn't about to walk into a Shark Tank wearing $50,000 worth of expectations. The car stopped at the entrance. A valet opened Caleb's door, and he stepped out into chaos barely disguised as elegance. Photographers lined the walkway, cameras clicking at every arrival. Guests and designer everything swept past, dripping jewelry and dismissive glances. Somewhere, a string quartet played something classical and vaguely mournful. Mr. Warren? A young woman with a clipboard materialized at his elbow. I'm Melissa, the wedding coordinator. Ms. Cross asked me to escort you to the prepared room. The what? She'll explain. This way, please. Melissa led him past the main entrance down a side path to what looked like a converted carriage house. Inside, the space had been transformed into a luxury dressing suite, complete with mirrors, flowers, and Evelyn Cross standing in front of a full-length mirror in a dress that made Caleb forget how to breathe. She turned at his entrance, and the world tilted slightly. The dress was midnight blue, simple and devastating, cut to follow every line of her body without being obvious about it. Her hair was down in soft waves, her makeup subtle except for her lips, which were the exact shade of wine-dark courage. You're staring, she said, but she was smiling. You're worth staring at. The words came out before Caleb's brain could filter them. Evelyn's cheeks flushed. You clean up well yourself. She gestured to Melissa, who discreetly left them alone. I wanted to see you before we go in. Make sure we're on the same page. Which page is that? The one where we walk in there together and remind everyone that I don't need their approval to be happy. She adjusted his tie, her fingers steady despite the nerves in her eyes. The one where you stand beside me and don't apologize for who you are or where you came from. I wasn't planning to apologize. Good. Because Damien's going to try to make you feel small. His mother will ask invasive questions disguised as polite conversation. Victoria's father will evaluate you like livestock. Evelyn met his eyes. And I need you to remember that their opinions mean nothing, that you're worth 10 of any of them. Caleb caught her hands. Are you trying to convince me or yourself? Both, maybe. She laughed shakily. I keep wondering what we're doing here. Why I thought this was a good idea. Because you deserve to show up on your own terms. Because Damien doesn't get to win by default. He squeezed her hands. Because sometimes the best revenge is living well and looking incredible while you do it. Is that what this is? Revenge? I thought that's what you wanted. I did. I do. Evelyn pulled away, walked to the window. Outside, guests streamed toward the main house in their finery and false smiles. But now, I'm standing here in this dress, about to walk into that circus with you, and I can't remember why it mattered so much to prove I'd moved on. Because you deserve better than being someone's cautionary tale. Caleb moved to stand beside her. Because every person in that room who believed Damien's version of your breakup needs to see that he was wrong. And if they don't see it, then we tried. That's all anyone can do. He offered his arm. Ready to make an entrance they'll never forget? Evelyn took his arm and her smile turned sharp. Let's show them what real looks like. They walked together toward the main house, past gardens dormant for winter and fountains that probably cost more than Caleb's entire education. The closer they got, the louder the murmur of voices became. Hundreds of guests gathering for a wedding that was more performance than promise. At the entrance, photographers surged forward. Flashes erupted like small explosions. Someone shouted Evelyn's name, then another voice, then a dozen. The questions came fast and overlapping. Mr. Cross, who's your date? Evelyn, are you and Damien still friends? Is this a new relationship? What do you do, sir? Evelyn stopped on the red carpet, because of course there was a red carpet, and turned to face the cameras. Caleb felt her grip tighten on his arm, but her face was serene. This is Caleb Warren, she said clearly. We're here to celebrate Damien and Victoria's happiness. How long have you been together? Someone shouted. Long enough to know what matters. Evelyn's smile could have cut glass. Now, if you'll excuse us. She swept inside before they could ask more questions, pulling Caleb with her into a foyer that belonged in Versailles. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, a staircase that curved like a swan's neck. And people. Everywhere, people in designer clothes and practiced smiles, turning to stare at Evelyn's entrance. The whispers started immediately. That's her. With someone new already? Who is he? Doesn't look like her usual type. Evelyn's jaw tightened fractionally, but she kept walking. Caleb matched her stride, hyper-aware of every eye tracking their movement. This was what she'd prepared him for, the scrutiny, the judgment, the casual cruelty of people who'd forgotten how to be kind. A server appeared with champagne. Evelyn took 2 glasses, handed one to Caleb. First rule of survival, she murmured. Always have something to do with your hands. What's the second rule? Find the exits and memorize them. But she was almost smiling. Come on, let's find our seats before the ceremony starts. The ceremony was being held in what the program called the Grand Conservatory, a glass-roofed room full of white flowers and white chairs and enough white fabric to outfit a small nation. Evelyn and Caleb were seated near the middle, close enough to see everything but far enough back to avoid the immediate family drama. Is this where I'm supposed to object when they ask? Caleb whispered as more guests filed in. Only if you want to give my father a heart attack. He's 3 rows ahead, left side. Evelyn nodded subtly toward an older man who looked like a meaner version of William Cross. That's Richard Hartford Stone. Victoria's father, old money personified, thinks anyone born after 1960 is nouveau riche. What does that make me? Delightfully irrelevant to his worldview. She squeezed his hand. Just smile and nod if he talks to you. Don't engage. Before Caleb could respond, the music shifted. Everyone stood. Caleb turned with the crowd to see Victoria Hartford Stone gliding down the aisle in a dress that probably cost more than his annual income, looking like every bridal magazine cover ever printed. Beautiful, polished, perfect, and utterly cold. Caleb watched her face as she passed, saw the practiced smile, the calculated grace, the complete absence of joy. This wasn't a woman in love. This was a woman executing a merger. He glanced at Damien Caldwell waiting at the altar. The groom looked exactly like his photos. Handsome in that bland, forgettable way, expensive suit hanging perfectly on his frame. But when Victoria reached him and they turned to face each other, Caleb saw what Evelyn must have seen too late. Damien wasn't looking at his bride. He was scanning the crowd, cataloging who'd come, whose attendance mattered for networking later. "He's not even looking at her," Caleb breathed. He never did. Evelyn's voice was flat. "That's what I didn't understand when we were together. I thought he was distracted by work, by ambition. Turned out he was just distracted from me." The ceremony began with all the pageantry money could buy. An officiant who probably charged by the syllable droned through vows that sounded like they'd been focus grouped. Damien and Victoria recited their parts with the enthusiasm of people signing a contract, which, Caleb supposed, they essentially were. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Damien leaned in with mechanical precision. The kiss lasted exactly 3 seconds. The crowd applauded politely. Somewhere, someone's phone chirped, and they didn't bother silencing it. "Is it wrong that I feel sorry for her?" Caleb asked as the newly married couple processed back down the aisle. "No, I feel sorry for both of them." Evelyn stood with the crowd. "They're going to make each other miserable for decades." Speaking from experience? Speaking from relief that I escaped. She turned to him, and her eyes held something that looked like gratitude. "Come on, reception's next. That's where the real show begins." The reception was in the main ballroom, a space so large it had its own weather system. Tables draped in cream silk, centerpieces of white roses that probably cost more than Caleb's monthly rent each, a dance floor polished to mirror brightness. And at the center of it all, a wedding cake that looked like it required structural engineering to stand upright. Their table was mercifully far from the head table, close enough to observe, distant enough to avoid immediate interaction. They were seated with other couples Caleb didn't recognize, all of whom introduced themselves with names and credentials like they were updating LinkedIn profiles. "I'm Marcus, Venture Capital, Stanford, and Wharton." "Bethany, art consultant, Sotheby's trained." "This is James. He runs a hedge fund, Princeton, naturally." When it was Caleb's turn, every eye at the table fixed on him with predatory interest. He felt Evelyn tense beside him. "Caleb Warren," he said calmly. "I drive deliveries and raise my daughter, public school educated." The silence was sharp enough to cut. Bethany's smile froze mid-formation. Marcus looked at Evelyn like she'd brought a stray dog to a dinner party. James actually laughed, short and condescending. "How refreshing," Bethany managed finally. "So you're like, what, an Uber driver?" "More like FedEx, but without the benefits." Caleb kept his voice light. "It pays the bills. Mostly." "And you and Evelyn are—" Marcus let the question hang. "Together," Evelyn said firmly, "which I believe is all the detail required." Of course," Marcus backpedaled smoothly. "Just making conversation. You know how these things are. Everyone's curious about everyone else's business." "Then they should find more interesting hobbies," Evelyn said coolly. "Caleb, would you like some champagne?" Before he could answer, a voice cut across the table like a blade. "Evelyn Cross, I heard you were here." Damien Caldwell stood behind Evelyn's chair, Victoria on his arm like an expensive accessory. Up close, the groom looked even less substantial. Weak chin, calculating eyes, smile that didn't reach past his teeth. Evelyn stood slowly, and Caleb stood with her. "Damien, congratulations on your marriage." "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." Damien's gaze slid to Caleb. "And you brought a guest. How unexpected." "This is Caleb Warren," Evelyn said, her hand finding Caleb's. "Caleb, Damien Caldwell, and his wife, Victoria." "Pleasure," Caleb said, not meaning it. Damien's smile sharpened. "Warren, that name sounds familiar. Have we met?" "Doubtful. I don't run in your circles." Caleb kept his voice pleasant. "Beautiful ceremony, very formal. We wanted traditional, classic." Damien's attention stayed fixed on Caleb, assessing, calculating. "What do you do, Mr. Warren?" "I deliver packages and raise my daughter, sometimes simultaneously." Caleb smiled blandly. "Nothing as impressive as venture capital." "How honest." The word dripped condescension. "And you and Evelyn met?" "We ran into each other, literally." Evelyn's voice carried an edge. He helped me pick up some papers I'd dropped. Turned out we had more in common than either of us expected. How serendipitous. Damien turned to Victoria, who'd been silent through the exchange, her face a mask of polite disinterest. Darling, didn't I tell you Evelyn would find someone eventually, even if it's a bit unconventional? Victoria's laugh was crystalline and empty. You did say she'd surprise us. You were right, as always. The casual cruelty of it, the implication that Caleb was a surprise in the worst way, made something cold settle in his chest. But before he could respond, Evelyn spoke. Unconventional works for me. I tried conventional once. It was terribly boring. Her smile was all teeth. But you two will figure that out eventually. Damien's expression flickered. Still sharp-tongued, I see. Some things never change. No, they improve. Evelyn's hand tightened on Caleb's. Enjoy your reception, Damien. I'm sure it will be everything you've planned down to the last detail, including your attendance. Damien leaned closer, lowered his voice. I wanted you here, Evelyn. Wanted you to see what moving on actually looks like. Victoria is everything you refuse to be. Supportive, gracious, willing to put family first. Congratulations on finding your emotional support prop, Evelyn said sweetly. I hope she's well compensated for the role. Victoria's mask cracked for just a second, a flash of something that might have been anger or might have been recognition. But Damien was already pulling her away, his grip on her arm just tight enough to leave marks. That went well, Caleb said as they sat back down. He wanted to make me feel small, make you feel inadequate. Evelyn reached for her champagne, drained half the glass. Did it work? Not even close. Caleb watched Damien and Victoria circulate through the crowd, all performance and no substance. If anything, I feel sorry for them. They're playing house with someone else's blueprint. And what are we playing? The question hit harder than it should have. Caleb looked at Evelyn, really looked at her in her midnight dress with her careful armor and her brave face, and couldn't find a simple answer. I don't know, he admitted, but it feels more real than anything happening in this room. Evelyn's eyes shone. Yeah, it does. Dinner was served course by course. Each plate an architectural marvel that tasted like money trying too hard to be interesting. Between courses, guests circulated, stopping by tables to gossip and network. Several stopped at theirs, drawn by curiosity about Evelyn's mysterious date. Most were politely condescending, asking questions designed to highlight Caleb's outsider status. A few were genuinely kind, and one, an older woman named Eleanor who'd known Evelyn since childhood, sat down uninvited and looked at Caleb like he was a puzzle she intended to solve. You're not what I expected, Eleanor said bluntly. I get that a lot tonight, Caleb replied. Good. Evelyn needs unexpected. She's spent too long being exactly what everyone else wanted. Eleanor turned to Evelyn. Your father is here. Did you see him? Evelyn's spine straightened. I saw his name on the guest list. Where is he? Near the bar, holding court with the Hartford Stones and half the board members who voted against you. Eleanor's expression was grim. He's been telling anyone who'll listen that you're making emotional decisions lately, letting personal feelings cloud your judgment. Of course he is. Evelyn's voice was flat. Thanks for the warning. Be careful, dear. William doesn't lose gracefully, and tonight he looks like he's planning something. Eleanor patted Evelyn's hand and stood. But for what it's worth, I'm glad you're here, with someone who looks at you like you're a person instead of an acquisition. She disappeared into the crowd before Evelyn could respond. Caleb watched his date process the information, saw the moment she made a decision. I need to talk to him, Evelyn said. My father. Clear the air before he causes more damage. Want backup? You've already done enough. Damien tried to humiliate us and you didn't blink. That's more than I had any right to ask. She stood, smoothed her dress. Stay here. Eat the overpriced food. I'll be back soon. But Caleb stood too. Not happening. You don't face William Cross alone. Caleb, we're a team, remember? Or was that just something you said to sound good? He offered his arm. Besides, I've been wanting to see the look on his face when you walk up with me. Evelyn's laugh was shaky. You really are insane. So you keep saying, come on, let's go remind your father that you didn't back down. They found William Cross exactly where Eleanor said, surrounded by men in expensive suits, holding a scotch like a scepter, mid-story about some deal he'd closed in the 80s. He saw Evelyn approaching and his expression went cold. "Gentlemen, excuse me," he said smoothly. "My daughter appears to need something." The circle opened. William stepped forward, and Caleb felt Evelyn's grip on his arm tighten to the point of pain. "Father," she said, "enjoying the wedding?" "More than you are, I suspect." His gaze flicked to Caleb. "Mr. Warren, I'm surprised to see you here. I thought we'd established boundaries." "Boundaries change," Caleb said calmly, "especially when they're built on threats instead of respect." William's smile was a warning. "You should teach your companion about discretion, Evelyn. Public confrontations at society weddings tend to end poorly for everyone involved." "Then let's keep this brief. Stop telling people I'm making emotional decisions. Stop undermining my position to the board. Stop using your influence to sabotage the SEC investigation." Evelyn's voice was low but fierce. "You lost the vote. Accept it." "I lost a battle. The war is far from over." William sipped his scotch. "You think filing complaints makes you righteous? It makes you naive. You'll learn soon enough that exposing Cross Holdings hurts you as much as it hurts me. Then we both bleed. I'm fine with that. Are you?" William looked at Caleb again. "What about your new friend here? Is he fine with it? Because when the press starts digging into cross-family drama, they won't stop at corporate records. They'll dig into everything, including who you're spending time with and why." The threat was clear. Caleb felt rage building in his chest, but Evelyn spoke first. "Let them dig. I've got nothing to hide." "Doesn't he, though?" William's smile turned cruel. "Failed startup founder, messy divorce, custody arrangement with an addict? How do you think that plays in family court when your ex-wife decides she wants her daughter back?" Caleb stepped forward before he could stop himself. "You leave my daughter out of this. Then leave my company out of your vendetta." William moved closer, voice dropping. "Walk away, Mr. Warren. Take whatever Evelyn's paying you and disappear. Because if you don't, I'll make sure you lose everything that matters." "I already lost everything that mattered," Caleb shot back. "Your company saw to that 5 years ago. So your threats? They're just noise." William's mask slipped. Real anger flashed across his face. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, boy." "Neither do you." Caleb didn't back down. "You see a delivery driver and think you can scare me into submission. But I've been scared before. I've been broken before. And I rebuilt. So whatever you're planning, whatever new way you think you can destroy me, bring it. Because I'm not going anywhere." The silence that followed was sharp enough to draw blood. Around them, the reception continued its oblivious celebration. Music, laughter, the clink of expensive crystal. But in this small circle, the war was quiet and vicious. "We're done here," Evelyn said finally, her voice shaking. "Come on, Caleb." They walked away together, leaving William Cross staring after them with murder in his eyes. They made it to the garden terrace before Evelyn's composure shattered. The November air hit them like a slap, cold enough to sting, but she kept walking until they were far from the glass doors and prying eyes. Then she stopped by a stone fountain, braced her hands against the rim, and tried to breathe. "I'm sorry," she said, the words coming out broken. "I shouldn't have brought you into this, shouldn't have exposed you to him." "Stop apologizing." Caleb moved beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You didn't make your father into what he is. That's his choice. But I dragged you into his line of fire. He threatened Mia, Caleb, your daughter." Her voice cracked. "Because of me. Because I was too stubborn to just let things go. He threatened Mia because he's desperate, because we're winning and he knows it." Caleb turned her to face him, hands on her shoulders. "Listen to me. William Cross is a bully who's used to people folding when he shows his teeth. But we didn't fold. And that scares him more than any SEC complaint." Evelyn looked up at him with eyes that held too much pain. "What if he follows through? What if he really goes after your custody arrangement? Then I fight, with lawyers, with documentation, with every piece of evidence that shows I'm a good father. Rachel's in rehab, again, her 3rd time in 5 years. No judge is going to give her custody based on rumors William plants. He softened his voice. But if you want me to walk away, to take myself out of the equation so he can't use me against you, I will. Just say the word. No. The word came out fierce. I'm so tired of walking away, of letting men like him decide what I'm allowed to fight for. She gripped his lapels. I'm tired of being afraid. Then don't be. Caleb pulled her closer, close enough that her perfume overwhelmed the garden's dying roses. Stand here with me and be furious instead. Be determined. Be anything except afraid. Evelyn searched his face like she was looking for proof that this was real, that he meant what he said. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because she leaned her forehead against his chest and just breathed. This wasn't supposed to happen, she whispered. What wasn't? This, you, caring about what happens to you. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. You were supposed to be a prop, a way to prove I'd moved on. But somewhere between the coffee shop and here, you became something else. Caleb's heart hammered against his ribs. What did I become? Someone I don't want to lose. Her hand came up to touch his face, fingers tracing his jaw with devastating gentleness. Someone who makes me want things I thought I'd given up on. The air between them turned electric. Caleb was intensely aware of how close they were standing, how her dress shimmered in the garden lights, how easy it would be to close the remaining distance and kiss her the way he'd been wanting to for weeks. Evelyn, he started, but she pressed her fingers to his lips. Don't. Not yet. Her smile was sad. We're still at Damien's wedding, still performing for cameras that could be anywhere. And I don't want our first real moment to be something that gets photographed and analyzed and turned into gossip. Then when? Soon, after this is over and we're somewhere that belongs to us, not them. She lowered her hand. Can you wait that long? Caleb could have pointed out that waiting might give them both time to reconsider, to remember all the reasons this was complicated and potentially disastrous. But looking at Evelyn in her midnight dress with her brave face and trembling hands, he didn't want to be reasonable. I can wait, he said, but for the record, I'm not great at patience. Noted. She straightened, rebuilt her armor piece by piece. We should go back inside. People will talk if we stay out here too long. Let them talk. That's what we came here for, isn't it? To make them talk. True. Evelyn linked her arm through his. Then let's give them something worth discussing. They returned to the reception to find the party in full swing. The band had started playing, couples swirled across the dance floor, and someone had dimmed the lights to something approximating romantic. Damien and Victoria performed their first dance with mechanical precision, both smiling at the cameras instead of each other. That could have been us, Evelyn murmured. If I'd said yes to everything you wanted, if I'd made myself smaller. But you didn't. No, I chose the Empire instead. She watched the newlyweds complete their choreographed circuit. Sometimes I wonder if that was the right choice. Do you regret it? No. But I regret that those were the only two options he gave me, Empire or him. Success or love. Like they couldn't coexist. Evelyn turned away from the dance floor. Come on, let's get another drink and find somewhere to sit that's not next to people who think I'm fascinating. They found a quiet corner near the back of the ballroom, claimed 2 chairs that gave them a view of the entire spectacle. From here, the wedding looked like a stage production, beautiful, expensive, and ultimately hollow. Caleb watched guests network between dance sets, saw deals being discussed over dessert plates, observed the careful choreography of people who'd turned socializing into a competitive sport. Your world exhausts me, he said. It exhausts me too. Evelyn sipped champagne that had gone slightly warm. That's why I work so much. At least in boardrooms, people are honest about wanting to destroy each other. Here, they smile while they do it. Is that what Damien did? Smiled while he destroyed you? He tried. Made it seem like leaving was for my own good. Like he was setting me free to focus on my career since I clearly couldn't handle both. She set down her glass. The worst part was that I almost believed him. Almost thought I was broken for wanting more than he was offering. You're not broken. You're just unwilling to settle. Is there a difference? Huge difference. Broken implies something's wrong with you. Unwilling to settle means you know your worth. Caleb leaned back, watched the crowd. These people, they all settled. Damien settled for Victoria's family connections. She settled for his money and status. Everyone here settled for something that looked good on paper instead of waiting for something real. And what are you waiting for? The question caught him off guard. Caleb thought about his cramped apartment, his delivery routes, his daughter's medical bills, thought about everything he'd lost and everything he'd rebuilt from nothing. I don't know. Something that matters more than looking good. Like what? Like watching Mia sign "I love you" before bed. Like knowing I did the right thing even when it cost me everything. Like standing next to someone who sees me as a person instead of a problem to solve or an asset to acquire. He met Evelyn's eyes. Like this, whatever this is between us. Evelyn's breath caught. Before she could respond, someone called her name. They both turned to see a woman approaching, 50s, elegant, radiating the kind of power that came from old money and older grudges. "Catherine Caldwell," Evelyn murmured. "Damien's mother. Brace yourself." Catherine stopped in front of them with a smile that could freeze fire. "Evelyn, darling, so good of you to come. Damien was worried you might not." "I wouldn't miss it." Evelyn stood, and Caleb stood with her. "Catherine, this is Caleb Warren." "Yes, I heard." Catherine's gaze raked over Caleb with surgical precision. "The delivery driver. How democratic of you, Evelyn. How observant of you to notice his occupation before his character," Evelyn shot back. "Some people lead with kindness. You lead with judgment." Catherine's smile tightened. "I'm simply surprised. You were always so particular about your companions. I assumed you'd find someone from your own sphere." "I did. Just not the sphere you're thinking of." Evelyn's voice could have cut steel. "Was there something you needed, Catherine? Or did you just want to take inventory of my personal life?" "I wanted to remind you that while you're welcome here, drama is not. Damien has moved on. Victoria is family now. Whatever bitterness you're holding on to needs to stay outside these walls." Catherine's eyes glittered. "We wouldn't want anything to ruin their special day. The only thing ruining their special day is watching them pretend to be in love," Caleb said before he could stop himself. "But don't worry, we're not here to cause trouble. We're here to witness whatever this is." Catherine's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Evelyn like Caleb was a dog who'd just spoken. "I see you've found someone with opinions." "I found someone honest. It's refreshing." Evelyn took Caleb's arm. "Now, if you'll excuse us, I believe they're about to cut the cake. We wouldn't want to miss such a pivotal moment." They walked away, leaving Catherine Caldwell staring after them with an expression somewhere between shock and rage. Caleb waited until they were out of earshot before speaking. "I probably shouldn't have said that." "You definitely should have said that." Evelyn was trying not to smile. "Catherine Caldwell hasn't been challenged in decades. It's good for her character." "She looked like she wanted to murder me." "She looked like she wanted to murder both of us, but she won't. She's too invested in appearances." Evelyn guided them toward the cake table, where a photographer was setting up shots of Damien and Victoria preparing to cut. "Watch this. This is my favorite part of weddings like these. The moment when they have to pretend feeding each other cake is romantic instead of awkward." She was right. Damien and Victoria approached the cake with all the enthusiasm of people fulfilling a contractual obligation. The photographer directed them through poses, adjusting angles, demanding smiles. When they finally cut the first slice, Damien fed Victoria with mechanical precision while she maintained her pageant-perfect grin. Flash bulbs exploded. The crowd applauded, and neither of them looked happy. "I used to think that would be us," Evelyn said quietly. "Standing there pretending to be something we weren't, performing happiness for people who'd dissect it later over coffee. I'm glad it's not." "Me too." She leaned against him slightly, just enough to matter. "Thank you for being here, for standing next to me while they all judged and whispered, for not pretending to be something you're not. That was the deal, remember? Real or nothing. It was. But deals change." Evelyn looked up at him. "Mine did. Somewhere between the coffee shop and your daughter asking if I was sad, between the board meeting and my father's threats, this stopped being a transaction. I don't know what it became, but it's not what we agreed to anymore." Caleb's chest tightened. "What are you saying?" I'm saying the $50,000 in the envelope in my purse doesn't feel right anymore. It feels like I'm reducing something real to a business arrangement. She took a breath. I'm saying I don't want to pay you to be here. I want you here because you choose to be. Evelyn, and I know that's not fair, because you agreed to this for Mia's medical bills, and taking that away because my feelings changed would be cruel. She rushed on before he could interrupt. So the money is still yours. No conditions, no expectations. But after tonight, after this wedding, I don't want there to be a transaction between us anymore. I want there to be a choice. Caleb stared at her, his mind racing. The money could change everything for Mia, could pay for her hearing aids, the surgery, months of care he couldn't otherwise afford. Walking away from it would be insane. But looking at Evelyn in her midnight dress with her heart in her eyes, he realized something that should have terrified him. He didn't want the money. Not anymore. He wanted to be the man she chose, not the man she hired. Keep your money, he heard himself say. What? Keep it. Donate it to a foundation for working parents or whatever you were planning to do with your guilt. But don't give it to me. He caught her hand. Because you're right. This isn't a transaction anymore, and I don't want to be paid for choosing to stand beside you. But Mia's medical bills, I'll figure it out, like I've been figuring things out for 5 years. I'm not saying it'll be easy, but I'd rather struggle and know this is real than take your money and always wonder if that's all it was. He squeezed her hand. You're worth more than $50,000, Evelyn, and so am I. Tears shone in her eyes, but she blinked them back. You're either the most honorable man I've ever met or the most foolish. Can I be both? Apparently. She laughed shakily. Okay, no transaction, no payment, just, us, figuring out what this is. Just us, Caleb agreed, and felt something fundamental shift in his chest, like a door opening to a room he hadn't known existed. They were still standing there, hands linked, when Evelyn's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went white. What's wrong? Caleb asked immediately. It's my lawyer. The SEC wants to meet. Tomorrow morning. They're ready to move forward with the investigation. She looked up, eyes wide. This is it. This is when everything becomes real. Then we make sure you're ready. Caleb pulled her closer. One crisis at a time. First we finish this wedding, then we figure out the rest. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's just necessary. He nodded toward the dance floor, where couples swayed to something slow and expensive sounding. Come on, we should dance. Make them all wonder what we're whispering about. I don't dance. Neither do I, so we'll figure it out together. He led her onto the floor before she could protest, pulled her into something approximating a waltz position, and promptly stepped on her foot. Sorry, he muttered. You really don't dance. But Evelyn was smiling, real and unguarded. Here, follow my lead. She guided them into the rhythm, and Caleb tried not to think about how perfectly she fit against him, how natural this felt despite the audience and cameras. Around them, other couples danced with practiced precision, but Caleb and Evelyn stumbled through like teenagers at prom, laughing when he missed steps, adjusting when she tried to lead too much. This is terrible, Evelyn said. Worst dancing I've ever done, Caleb agreed. We look ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I love it. Her smile was incandescent. I love that we're terrible at this and neither of us cares. Caleb spun her, badly, ungracefully, and she laughed like she meant it. The sound cut through the ballroom's careful ambiance, loud and genuine and completely out of place. Heads turned, people stared. Somewhere a camera flashed, and Caleb realized that Evelyn had been right earlier. This moment, this messy, imperfect dance in front of everyone who judged them was worth more than any amount of money. Because it was real. Because they'd chosen it. The song ended. Couples separated, applauded politely, returned to their tables. Caleb and Evelyn stayed on the dance floor for a beat too long, still close, still smiling. We should go, Evelyn said finally, before someone expects us to do that again. Coward. Pragmatist. She took his hand. Come on, let's make our exit before the drama finds us again. But drama had been waiting. As they collected Evelyn's coat and headed toward the exit, William Cross materialized in their path like a bad omen made flesh. Leaving so soon? He asked, voice dripping false concern. The night's barely begun. We've seen enough, Evelyn said coldly. Move, father. In a moment. First, Mr. Warren and I need to have a brief conversation, man to man. William's smile was all teeth. Unless you're afraid to face me without your protector. I'm not afraid of you, Caleb said flatly. Then step outside with me. 2 minutes. That's all I need. William gestured toward a side door. Unless you'd prefer to have this discussion in front of witnesses. Evelyn's grip on Caleb's arm tightened. Don't. He's baiting you. I know. But Caleb was tired of being threatened, tired of watching William Cross manipulate from the shadows. 2 minutes, then we're done. Caleb, I'll be fine. He kissed her forehead, quick, reassuring, and followed William into the cold garden night. They walked in silence until they were far from the house, near a hedge maze that looked like something from a Gothic novel. William stopped, turned, and dropped all pretense of civility. You're smarter than I gave you credit for, he said. Most men would have taken the money and run. But you're playing a longer game. I'm not playing anything. Please. You show up out of nowhere, charm my daughter, position yourself as her white knight against the evil corporation. It's textbook. William pulled out a cigarette, lit it with practiced ease. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk away from Evelyn, tonight, permanently. In exchange, I'll ensure the Helix settlement gets revisited. New terms, actual compensation for what you lost. Caleb went very still. You're offering me money to leave her. I'm offering you justice. The justice you've been seeking for 5 years. All you have to do is disappear from my daughter's life and let her focus on running the company without distractions. William blew smoke into the night air. $500,000, deposited tomorrow. All I need is your word that you'll end whatever this is and stay away. $500,000. Enough to pay for Mia's surgery 10 times over. Enough to stop delivering packages and start rebuilding. Enough to fix every financial problem that had plagued him since the acquisition. No, Caleb said. William's eyebrows rose. No? No, I'm not leaving Evelyn, and I'm not taking your blood money. Caleb stepped closer. You don't get it, do you? You can't buy everything. Some things, some people, aren't for sale at any price. Everyone has a price, Mr. Warren. Yours is just higher than I estimated. William's expression turned calculating. $1 million. Final offer. Walk away tonight, and you'll never have to worry about money again. Your daughter gets the best care available. You get your life back. All it costs is a relationship that's barely begun. For a heartbeat, Caleb wavered. $1 million. Mia's future secured. Everything he'd lost, restored. All he had to do was walk away from a woman he'd known for 3 weeks, a relationship that was complicated and potentially doomed from the start. Then he thought about Evelyn dancing badly and laughing like she meant it. Thought about her standing up to the board, filing complaints against her own family's company, choosing integrity over inheritance. Thought about the way she looked at him like he mattered. Go to hell, Caleb said calmly. Caleb, you and your money and your threats. I'm not for sale, and neither is Evelyn. William's mask of civility cracked completely. You're making a mistake. I will destroy you. I'll make sure you lose custody of your daughter, lose any chance at rebuilding your career, lose everything you care about. And Evelyn will watch it happen and know it's her fault for being too stubborn to let you go. Then I guess we'll both go down fighting. Caleb turned to leave. But we'll do it together, and that's more than you've ever had with anyone. He walked away before William could respond, his heart pounding, adrenaline singing through his veins. He'd just turned down $1 million and essentially declared war on one of the most powerful men in New York. It was possibly the stupidest decision he'd ever made. It was also the most honest. Evelyn was waiting by the door, her face tight with worry. When she saw him, relief flooded her features. What happened? What did he say? He offered me $1 million to leave you. Her eyes went wide. He what? $1 million. Walk away tonight. Never contact you again. Let him bury the SEC complaint in peace. Caleb took her hands. I told him no. Caleb, $1 million. That's Mia's surgery, your future. I know what it is, and I know what I said. He pulled her close. I told him some things aren't for sale. That includes you. That includes this, whatever we're building. Evelyn stared at him like he'd grown a second head. You're insane. You just turned down $1 million. I turned down blood money from a man who thinks everything has a price. There's a difference. He kissed her forehead. Now can we please leave this nightmare and go somewhere that doesn't smell like money and desperation? Yes. She grabbed her coat, her purse, his hand. Yes, let's get out of here. They made it to the car, to the driveway, to the main road before Evelyn started laughing. Not polite reception laughter, but great gulping gasps of genuine amusement that bent her double. What's so funny? Caleb asked. You, me, all of it. She wiped her eyes. We just walked out of my ex-fiance's wedding after you turned down $1 million from my father, and I filed federal complaints against my own company. This is insane. Technically, you filed those complaints before the wedding. That doesn't make it less insane. But she was still laughing, and Caleb found himself joining in, the absurdity of their situation hitting him all at once. They laughed until the Hartford Stone estate was miles behind them, until the city lights began to appear on the horizon, until the weight of what they'd done started to settle in their chests like stones. What happens now? Evelyn asked as the laughter faded. Now we face the consequences. The SEC investigation, your father's revenge, whatever else comes. Caleb reached over, took her hand. But we face it together. No transactions, no performances, just us choosing each other every day even when it's hard. That sounds terrifying. It is, but it's also the most honest thing either of us has done in years. He squeezed her hand. And for what it's worth, I think we're going to be okay. Evelyn looked at him in the dim car interior, city lights painting her face in streaks of gold and shadow. I'm falling in love with you. That's probably the worst timing in history, but there it is. I'm falling in love with a man I hired to be my wedding date, who turned down $1 million, who has a 7-year-old daughter and drives a van held together with duct tape. I'm in love with you, and I don't know what to do about it. The words hit Caleb like a physical blow, not painful, just overwhelming. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, his phone exploded with notifications. One after another, messages flooding in. He pulled it out, his stomach dropping as he read the first message from Mrs. Chen. Caleb, call me immediately. Rachel showed up. She took Mia. The world tilted. Caleb's vision narrowed to that single sentence, his heart stopping mid-beat. Rachel took Mia. His ex-wife, fresh from rehab and unreliable on her best days, had taken their daughter. Stop the car, he said, his voice coming from very far away. What's wrong? Evelyn leaned over to look at his phone, and he watched her face go pale as she read. Oh God, when? How? I don't know. I need to... He couldn't finish, couldn't think past the panic flooding his system. Mia, his baby girl, with Rachel, who'd proven over and over that she couldn't be trusted to keep her daughter safe. Driver, turn around, Evelyn commanded. We're going to Queens, now. The car executed a U-turn that probably violated several traffic laws. Caleb stared at his phone, reading Mrs. Chen's message again and again, like the words might change if he looked hard enough. Rachel had court papers. Said she'd been granted emergency custody. I tried to stop her, but she said it was legal. Mia was crying. I'm so sorry, Caleb. This is my father, Evelyn said, her voice shaking. He did this. He said he'd go after your custody, and he did. I don't care whose fault it is. I need to find my daughter. Caleb was already dialing Rachel's number. It went straight to voicemail. He tried again, same result. She turned off her phone. She knew I'd call, and His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered before the first ring finished. Hello? Mr. Warren. A woman's voice, professional and cold. This is Patricia Marshall from Child Protective Services. I'm calling regarding your daughter, Mia Warren. We need to schedule an emergency review of your custody arrangement. The words didn't make sense. CPS, emergency review. This couldn't be happening. Where's my daughter? Caleb demanded. She's currently with her mother in a temporary placement. Given the concerning circumstances that have come to light regarding your living situation and recent associations, we felt it necessary to... What concerning circumstances? I've done everything right. I've provided for her, kept her safe. Mr. Warren, I understand you're upset, but these matters are best discussed in person. Can you come to our offices tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.? Patricia Marshall's voice was implacable. We'll review the case and determine next steps. I want my daughter back now. That's not possible. The emergency order is in place for 72 hours while we conduct our investigation. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Please bring documentation of employment, housing, and any relevant financial records. She ended the call before Caleb could respond. He stared at his phone like it had betrayed him. 72 hours. 3 days without knowing if Mia was safe, if she was scared, if Rachel was sober or spiraling. 3 days of his daughter wondering why her father wasn't coming for her. Caleb, Evelyn's voice broke through his panic. Look at me. We're going to fix this. How? Your father just weaponized CPS against me. He probably bribed someone, falsified reports, whatever it took to make this happen. Caleb's voice cracked. She's 7 years old, and she's with someone who can barely take care of herself, and I can't do anything for 3 days. You can fight, you can gather evidence and hire lawyers and show CPS that this is retaliation, not legitimate concern. Evelyn grabbed his hands. And I'm going to help you, not with money. I know you don't want that, but with resources, connections, whatever you need to prove your father manufactured this crisis. Why would you do that? This isn't your problem. Because it is my problem. Because my father did this. Because you stood up to him for me and now you're paying the price. Her voice turned fierce. And because you just told me you're falling in love with me and I'm not letting William Cross destroy that. Not without a fight. Caleb wanted to argue, wanted to push her away before his sinking ship dragged her down too. But looking at Evelyn in the dim car with her jaw set and her eyes blazing, he realized something crucial. She wasn't offering out of guilt or obligation. She was choosing to stand beside him the same way he'd chosen to stand beside her. Okay, he said finally. Okay. Help me fight. But we do it right. No bribes, no shortcuts, nothing that gives them ammunition against us later. Agreed. Evelyn pulled out her phone, started typing. I'm calling my lawyer, the best family attorney in New York. She'll meet us tomorrow morning before the CPS meeting. The car sped through the night toward Queens, toward Caleb's empty apartment, and the deafening silence of a home missing its heart. And somewhere in the darkness, Mia was learning that sometimes the people who were supposed to protect you failed in spectacular fashion. But Caleb wasn't done fighting, neither was Evelyn. And William Cross had just made the mistake of underestimating them both. The apartment felt like a tomb. Caleb stood in the doorway of Mia's room, staring at her bed with its rumpled penguin sheets, her glow-in-the-dark stars still faintly visible on the ceiling. Her hearing aids sat in their case on the nightstand. She must have been wearing the older pair when Rachel took her. The backup pair that didn't fit quite right, that made everything sound tinny and distant. She'll be terrified, he said to the empty room. Rachel doesn't know the signs for comfort, doesn't understand that Mia needs routine and patience, and his voice broke. Evelyn's hand found his shoulder. She'd followed him into the apartment without asking, had simply stayed close while he checked every room like Mia might materialize if he looked hard enough. We'll get her back. Tomorrow we start building the case. Tomorrow's 12 hours away. I know. She turned him to face her. But standing here torturing yourself won't make it go faster. Come on, when's the last time you ate something? I don't know. The wedding? Caleb rubbed his face. I can't think about food right now. You need to stay functional. For Mia, for the meeting tomorrow, for yourself. Evelyn pulled him toward the kitchen. Sit. I'm making something. Don't argue. He sat at the small table while she rummaged through his cabinets, finding pasta and jarred sauce and the basics of a meal. Watching Evelyn Cross, billionaire CEO in her midnight blue dress and bare feet, having kicked off her heels somewhere near the door, cook in his cramped kitchen should have been surreal. Instead, it felt like the only real thing in a nightmare of bureaucracy and threats. My lawyer will meet us at 8:30 tomorrow, Evelyn said, setting water to boil. Her name is Jennifer Reeves. She's handled custody battles against vindictive exes before, knows how to navigate CPS, and more importantly, she doesn't intimidate easily. How much does she cost? That's not your concern right now. Evelyn, I said it's not your concern. Her voice was firm. You can argue with me about money later. Right now, the priority is getting Mia back safely. Everything else is negotiable. Caleb wanted to fight her on it, wanted to maintain some shred of independence, but exhaustion was setting in, bone deep and relentless, and he didn't have the energy to battle on multiple fronts. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for staying, for helping, for not running when my life imploded." "Where would I run to?" Evelyn's smile was sad. "Besides, you stayed when mine imploded. Seems only fair to return the favor." They ate pasta in near silence, both lost in their own spirals of worry and planning. Caleb's phone sat on the table between them, a silent accusation. No calls from Rachel, no updates from CPS, no word about whether Mia was eating or sleeping or understanding why her whole world had been upended. "I keep thinking about what she must be feeling," Caleb said, pushing food around his plate. "She was at the aquarium with Mrs. Chen, probably having the best day, and then Rachel showed up with court papers and just took her. No warning, no explanation Mia could understand." "Does Rachel know sign language?" "Basic signs, but she never practiced, never really tried to connect with Mia that way." He set down his fork. "When Mia was diagnosed with hearing loss, Rachel checked out. Said she couldn't handle having a special needs kid. Like Mia was defective instead of just different." Evelyn's expression darkened. "And CPS gave her custody anyway?" "Emergency custody, which means someone convinced them I was an immediate threat to Mia's well-being." Caleb's hands clenched into fists. "Your father probably paid off a caseworker, fabricated evidence, whatever it took. Made it look like I was unstable or dangerous or—" "Stop." Evelyn reached across the table, covered his hands with hers. "Spiraling won't help. We stick to facts, gather evidence, and present a clear case tomorrow. Jennifer will know how to handle falsified claims." "What if it's not enough? What if the system is so corrupt that truth doesn't matter?" "Then we escalate. We go to the media, to higher courts, to anyone who'll listen, but I don't think it'll come to that." She squeezed his hands. "Your father kept meticulous records of your custody arrangement, right? School records, medical appointments, proof of stability. Everything's documented. I learned early that Rachel would use any excuse to claim I was unfit. So I saved every receipt, every report card, every doctor's note." Caleb managed a grim smile. "Paranoia pays off sometimes." "Then we have ammunition. Tomorrow we show CPS that this emergency order was based on lies. We show them who you really are. A devoted father who's provided stability and love despite impossible circumstances." Evelyn stood, started clearing dishes. "And we show them that Rachel's history of addiction and instability makes her the actual threat." Caleb watched her move around his kitchen like she belonged there, washing dishes in a designer dress, and felt something crack in his chest. This woman, who could be anywhere, doing anything, had chosen to be here. In his cramped apartment, facing his crisis, fighting his battles like they were her own. "I love you," he said. Evelyn froze mid-rinse, turned slowly. "What?" "You said earlier that you're falling in love with me." "Well, I'm already there, completely, terrifyingly in love with you." The words poured out like a dam breaking. "I know the timing is awful. I know we're in the middle of multiple disasters, but I can't not say it. You're standing in my kitchen washing dishes in a ball gown because my life exploded, and I'm in love with you." She set down the plate carefully, dried her hands on a towel, crossed the small space between them until she was close enough that he could see gold flecks in her gray eyes. "Say it again," she whispered. "I love you." "One more time." "I love you, Evelyn Cross. I love that you fight even when you're terrified. I love that you chose integrity over inheritance. I love that you see me, really see me, instead of what I can't provide." He pulled her closer. "I love you, and I don't care if that makes this more complicated." Evelyn kissed him, not gentle or tentative, but fierce and claiming, like she was staking a flag in territory she'd decided was hers. Caleb kissed her back with everything he had, weeks of tension and longing and carefully maintained distance, dissolving in the space of heartbeats. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Evelyn rested her forehead against his. "I love you too, and you're right, the timing is terrible, but I don't care either. We're probably making a huge mistake. Probably." She smiled against his lips. "Let's make it anyway." They stood there in his kitchen, holding each other while the city hummed outside and disaster waited in the wings. Tomorrow they'd fight CPS and William Cross and whatever else came. But tonight, in the quiet space between one crisis and the next, they chose each other. When Caleb finally pulled back, his voice was rough. "You should go home. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be brutal." "I'm not leaving you alone tonight." "Evelyn, I'm not leaving," she repeated firmly. "You can give me a blanket and point me toward the couch, or you can accept that I'm staying and stop arguing about it." Caleb looked at her, still in her ball gown, barefoot in his kitchen, absolutely immovable, and surrendered. "Couch is all yours. I'll find you something to sleep in that's not a wedding dress." He dug through his drawers, found an old t-shirt and sweatpants that would be comically large on her. Evelyn took them without comment, changed in the bathroom, and emerged looking nothing like a billionaire CEO and everything like someone he could imagine waking up beside for the rest of his life. "This is definitely the weirdest first date aftermath in history," she said, settling onto his couch. "We skipped a lot of steps." Caleb handed her a blanket. "Usually people go on actual dates before declaring love and facing federal investigations together. We're overachievers." She pulled him down beside her. "Stay for a minute? I don't want to be alone with my thoughts yet." He stayed. They sat in the dark with the city lights filtering through his inadequate curtains, not talking, just breathing together. Caleb thought about Mia sleeping somewhere unknown, probably confused and scared. Thought about tomorrow's battle and all the ways it could go wrong. Thought about the woman beside him who turned his careful life into beautiful chaos. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Evelyn said quietly, "we face it together. No walking away, no protecting each other by leaving. We stay and we fight." "Together," Caleb agreed. He meant to go to his mattress on the living room floor to give Evelyn space, but exhaustion pulled him under right there on the couch, Evelyn's warmth against his side the only anchor in a spinning world. Morning came too fast and too bright. Caleb woke to find Evelyn already awake, scrolling through her phone with a frown. "What's wrong?" he asked, sitting up. "My father released a statement to the press. It hit the tabloids an hour ago." She turned her phone so he could read the headline. "Cross heiress and custody battle scandal. New boyfriend's troubled past exposed." Caleb scanned the article, nausea building with every paragraph. Someone had leaked details about the Helix acquisition, his failed marriage, Rachel's addiction. All of it spun to make him look like an opportunist using Evelyn for money while neglecting his daughter. The article included quotes from anonymous sources close to the family, suggesting Caleb was unstable, vindictive, possibly dangerous. "This is character assassination," he said. "This is William Cross doing what he does best, controlling the narrative." Evelyn took back her phone. "But it can work in our favor too. The more desperate he looks, the more obvious it becomes that this is retaliation, not legitimate concern." "You really think CPS will see it that way?" "Jennifer will make sure they do." Evelyn checked the time. "She'll be here in 20 minutes. You should get ready." The CPS office was exactly what Caleb expected. Fluorescent lights, worn linoleum, the smell of institutional coffee, and bureaucratic despair. Jennifer Reeves met them in the lobby, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Warren," she shook his hand firmly. "Ms. Cross briefed me on the situation. Before we go in, I need to know, is there anything in your history that could be used against you? Arrests, substance abuse, anything they might twist?" "Nothing. Clean record, steady employment, documented medical care for Mia. The only mark against me is that I'm not rich." Caleb met her eyes. "And that I turned down William Cross's bribe." Jennifer's lips twitched. "That's not a mark against you in my book." "Okay, let me do most of the talking. If they ask you direct questions, answer honestly but briefly. Don't volunteer information they haven't asked for, and don't get defensive even when they push." "I can do that." "Good. Ms. Cross, you'll need to wait here. Only parties directly involved in the case can attend." Evelyn started to protest, but Caleb touched her arm. "It's okay. I've got this." "Call me the second you're done," she said. "I'll be right here." The conference room was small and airless. Patricia Marshall from CPS sat across from Caleb with a file thick enough to give him nightmares. Beside her was another woman who introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Kim, a child psychologist assigned to assess Mia's placement. "Mr. Warren, thank you for coming," Patricia began. "I understand this situation is distressing, but we need to address some serious concerns that have been raised about your daughter's welfare." "What concerns?" Caleb kept his voice level. "I've provided Mia with stable housing, consistent medical care, educational support, everything a parent should provide. The concerns relate to your recent behavior and associations, specifically your relationship with Evelyn Cross and the circumstances surrounding it." Patricia opened the file. "We've received reports that you've been accepting money from Ms. Cross in exchange for companionship, that you've been exposing Mia to unstable situations, and that your obsession with revenge against Cross Holdings has compromised your ability to prioritize your daughter's needs." Each word was a knife. Caleb forced himself to breathe. "Those reports are lies, fabrications designed to discredit me." "By whom?" "By William Cross, Evelyn's father. He's been threatening my custody arrangement since I refused his bribes." Caleb pulled out his phone, showed them the timestamps of William's calls, the locations where they'd met. "He offered me $1 million last night to leave his daughter alone. When I refused, he weaponized CPS against me." Dr. Kim leaned forward. "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Warren. It's a serious situation. William Cross has the resources to fabricate evidence, buy testimony, and make me look like a threat to my own daughter, but none of it's true." Caleb met her eyes. "I love Mia more than anything in this world. I've sacrificed everything to keep her safe and healthy. Check my records. Medical appointments never missed. School conferences attended, therapies scheduled and paid for, even when I could barely afford rent. I'm not perfect, but I'm a good father." Patricia consulted her file. "According to your ex-wife, you've been using Mia as a pawn in your vendetta against the Cross family. That you've been so focused on your relationship with Miss Cross that you've neglected basic parental duties. Rachel is an addict who abandoned her daughter 3 years ago. She's been in and out of rehab, missed every custody hearing, and hasn't paid child support in 18 months. Now she shows up with emergency custody papers, and you believe her over documented evidence." Caleb heard his voice rising and forced it back down. "Someone paid Rachel to make those claims. Someone convinced her that taking Mia would hurt me, and she did it because she's still resentful about the divorce." "Do you have proof of payment?" Jennifer slid a folder across the table. "Bank records showing a $50,000 deposit into Rachel Warren's account 3 days ago. Source? A shell company with ties to Cross Holdings. The same amount William Cross originally paid her 5 years ago to keep quiet about the Helix Systems acquisition." Patricia and Dr. Kim exchanged glances. Patricia opened the folder, scanned the documents. "How did you obtain these?" "Subpoena," Jennifer said calmly. "When we learned about the emergency custody order, we immediately filed for financial records. These arrived this morning. As you can see, Rachel Warren received a substantial payment within 48 hours of filing for custody. The timing is hardly coincidental." Dr. Kim leaned back, her expression thoughtful. "This does raise questions about motive." "It raises questions about the entire emergency order," Jennifer pressed. "This isn't a case of legitimate welfare concerns. This is corporate retaliation dressed up as child protection. William Cross is using your agency to punish Mr. Warren for dating his daughter and refusing bribes." "That's a serious allegation against a prominent businessman," Patricia said carefully. "It's a true allegation backed by documentation. Financial records, phone logs, witness testimony from the wedding reception where William Cross publicly threatened Mr. Warren's custody." Jennifer pulled out another document. "I also have affidavits from Mr. Warren's neighbors, Mia's teachers, her doctors, all attesting to his dedication as a father and Mia's well-being in his care." "What about Ms. Cross's role in this?" Dr. Kim asked. "The relationship does seem to have developed very quickly." "It developed organically over 3 weeks. They met by chance, discovered common ground, and chose to explore a relationship. That's not unusual or suspicious." Jennifer's voice was firm. "What is suspicious is a powerful man orchestrating an emergency custody order because he doesn't approve of his adult daughter's dating choices." Patricia closed the file slowly. "Dr. Kim and I need to discuss this privately. Mr. Warren, you'll wait outside. We'll call you back in shortly." The wait felt eternal. Caleb paced the lobby while Evelyn sat with her laptop, monitoring news coverage and coordinating with her own lawyers. Jennifer made calls, lined up character witnesses, prepared for escalation if needed. "They're going to give her back," Evelyn said with more confidence than she probably felt. "The evidence is too clear. They have to see this as retaliation. Unless your father bought them too." "He didn't. Jennifer would know." Evelyn pulled him down beside her. "Breathe. Trust the process. We showed them the truth. Now we wait." 45 minutes later, Patricia emerged. "Mr. Warren, we're ready for you." Back in the conference room, both women looked grave. Caleb's heart sank. "After reviewing the evidence and discussing the circumstances," Patricia began, "we've decided to vacate the emergency custody order. Mia will be returned to your care this afternoon." Relief hit Caleb so hard he almost collapsed. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "However," Dr. Kim continued, "we will be opening an investigation into how this order was obtained. If we find evidence that false reports were filed or that this agency was manipulated for personal reasons, we will pursue appropriate legal action." "We'll cooperate fully," Jennifer said. "See that you do." "Mr. Warren, Mia will be available for pickup at 3 p.m. We'll need to conduct a brief wellness check at your apartment within the next week. Standard procedure. Beyond that, you're cleared to resume normal custody." Patricia stood. "I apologize for the distress this has caused. For what it's worth, it's clear you're a devoted father." Caleb couldn't speak, just nodded and shook their hands and followed Jennifer out into the lobby where Evelyn was waiting. The moment she saw his face, she knew. "You got her back." "I got her back." The words came out choked. 3 p.m. pickup. Evelyn threw her arms around him right there in the CPS lobby, and Caleb held on like she was the only thing keeping him upright. Maybe she was. "Thank you," he said to Jennifer over Evelyn's shoulder. "I can't afford your rates, but I'll figure out payments." "Already handled," Evelyn said into his chest. "Evelyn, not negotiable. This was my father's mess. I'm helping clean it up." She pulled back, wiped her eyes. "Besides, you can pay me back by letting me be there when you pick up Mia. I want to see her face when she realizes she's going home." 3 p.m. couldn't come fast enough. Caleb spent the intervening hours cleaning his apartment, preparing Mia's room, trying not to think about what the past 24 hours had been like for his daughter. Evelyn stayed close, helping where she could, making calls about the SEC investigation and her father's latest moves. "The board wants another meeting," she said, hanging up her phone. "They're concerned about the publicity. William's trying to frame this as me being unstable, letting my personal life affect my judgment." "What are you going to tell them?" "The truth, that I filed legitimate complaints about corporate fraud, that my father retaliated by attacking my personal life, and that I'm not backing down." She smiled grimly. "I'm also going to recommend we vote to remove William from the board entirely. Enough members are disgusted by his tactics that I might actually get the votes. That'll start a war. It'll end one. William only has power because people are afraid to challenge him. But if the board sees he's vulnerable, that his tactics have consequences, some of them will turn." Evelyn's eyes glittered. "It's time to stop letting him control everything." At 2:45 p.m., they arrived at the facility where Mia was being held temporarily. It was a cheerful place trying to disguise institutional purpose. Bright walls, toys in the waiting room, staff who smiled too much. Caleb signed paperwork with shaking hands while Evelyn stood beside him, a steadying presence. "She's been asking for you constantly," the intake coordinator said gently. "We've tried to keep her calm, but she's been very distressed. Can I see her now?" "Of course, right this way." They were led down a hallway to a playroom where children of various ages occupied themselves under watchful eyes. And there, in the corner with a book she wasn't reading, sat Mia. She looked smaller than Caleb remembered, wearing the same clothes she'd had on when Rachel took her, her backup hearing aids visible at her ears. "Mia," he said. She looked up. For one suspended moment, she just stared like she couldn't believe he was real. Then she launched herself across the room with a cry of "Daddy!" that broke every heart in the vicinity. Caleb caught her, swung her up, held her so tight he probably crushed her ribs. "I've got you, baby. I've got you. You're safe now." Mia was crying, signing frantically between sobs. Scared. Mama said you didn't want me anymore, said I had to stay with her, but I wanted you. I wanted to come home. I always want you. Always. There was just some confusion, but it's fixed now. You're coming home with me right now. Caleb kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her hair. I love you so much, sweetheart. I'm so sorry you were scared. Mia pulled back enough to look at him, then noticed Evelyn standing nearby. Her eyes widened. The pretty lady came too? Hi, Mia, Evelyn said softly, kneeling down. I came to make sure your dad could bring you home. Are you okay? Mia studied her with the serious intensity of children. Then she reached out and touched Evelyn's face. You're not sad anymore. Evelyn's laugh was watery. No, I'm not sad anymore. Good. Mia turned back to Caleb. Can we go home now? I want my room and my penguin sheets and my good hearing aids. Yes. Right now. Let's go home. The intake coordinator helped them collect Mia's things. Her jacket, the stuffed penguin Mrs. Chen had sent with her, her school backpack. Caleb signed the final release forms while Mia clung to his leg like she was afraid he'd disappear if she let go. In the car back to Queens, Mia sat between Caleb and Evelyn, holding both their hands. She chattered about the aquarium trip that felt like a lifetime ago, about the penguins that could swim underwater, about how Mrs. Chen had bought her hot chocolate even though it was expensive. I missed you, Daddy, she said, her voice too loud without being able to hear herself properly. I was really, really scared. I know, baby, but you're safe now. And you're going to stay safe, I promise. Caleb kissed the top of her head. How about we order pizza for dinner? Extra cheese? Can Evelyn stay? Mia looked at Evelyn hopefully. I want to show her my stars. Evelyn glanced at Caleb, a question in her eyes. He nodded. I'd love to see your stars, Evelyn said. That night, Caleb's small apartment felt full in the best way. Mia gave Evelyn a tour of her room, showed her every constellation on the ceiling, explained in detail the difference between penguins and puffins. They ate pizza on the floor because Mia insisted it was more fun that way. They drew pictures. Mia's showed 3 stick figures holding hands under a sky full of stars. That's you and me and Evelyn, Mia explained, signing as she spoke. We're a family now. Caleb's chest tightened. Sweetheart, it's not quite that simple. Why not? Mia looked between them with perfect 7-year-old logic. You love her. She loves you. She came to help bring me home. That's what families do. Out of the mouths of babes. Caleb met Evelyn's eyes over his daughter's head and saw his own emotions reflected back, hope and fear, and the terrifying possibility that maybe this could actually work. She's not wrong, Evelyn said softly. No, Caleb agreed. She's not. Later, after Mia was asleep in her own bed with her good hearing aids in their case and her penguin clutched tight, Caleb and Evelyn sat on the couch in the dark. Your father's going to come at us again, Caleb said. This isn't over. No, but we won this round and we'll win the next one. Evelyn leaned her head on his shoulder. The board meeting is in 2 days. I'm going to push for his removal. It's going to be ugly. Will you win? I don't know, but I have to try. I can't keep working for a company he controls, can't keep fighting him from inside a system he built to protect himself. She was quiet for a moment. I might lose. The board might choose him over me, and I might have to walk away from Cross Holdings entirely. What would you do? Start over, build something new, something that doesn't have his corruption baked into the foundation. She smiled against his shoulder. Seems appropriate, given that I'm dating someone who's done exactly that. My fresh start involved a lot of ramen and duct tape. Mine will probably involve angry lawyers and vindictive press coverage. But the principle is the same. Sometimes you have to let the old thing die to build something better. Caleb pulled her closer. For what it's worth, I think you're going to win. You fight harder than anyone I've ever met. We fight harder, she corrected. This isn't just my battle anymore. No, it's ours. They sat in the quiet dark, listening to the city hum and Mia's soft breathing from the next room. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the board meeting, Williams' retaliation, the ongoing SEC investigation. But tonight, they had this, peace and safety, and the beginning of something that looked almost like home. The board meeting 2 days later was exactly as ugly as Evelyn predicted. Caleb waited in the lobby, barred from attending but close enough to be there when it ended. He watched board members file in, some nodding to him in recognition from the wedding, others pretending he didn't exist. William Cross arrived last, flanked by lawyers and wearing the expression of a man who'd already won. He didn't even glance at Caleb as he passed. "Arrogant bastard," Caleb muttered. "He should be," said a voice beside him. Eleanor, the woman from the wedding reception, had materialized in the lobby. William's been manipulating this board for 40 years. He knows every pressure point, every secret, every debt owed. Evelyn's brave for challenging him, but brave doesn't always win. "What are you doing here?" "I'm on the board, and I'm voting to remove William Cross from his position." Eleanor's smile was sharp. "I've been waiting 20 years for someone with the courage to call for that vote. Evelyn gave me the opportunity. The least I can do is support her." "How many votes does she need?" 7 out of 12 for removal. It'll be close." Eleanor headed toward the conference room. "But sometimes close is enough." The meeting lasted 3 hours. Caleb paced the lobby, checked on Mia via text with Mrs. Chen, tried not to imagine worst-case scenarios. When the doors finally opened, board members emerged in clusters, some looking satisfied, others shell-shocked. William Cross stormed past without a word, his face carved from fury. Good sign or bad? Caleb couldn't tell. Then Evelyn appeared, and her expression told him everything. Exhausted but triumphant, shoulders back, chin high. 7 votes, she said. Exactly 7. William Cross is no longer on the Cross Holdings board. Caleb pulled her into his arms. You did it. You actually did it. We did it. Eleanor said your presence in the lobby helped. Seeing you here reminded the board that William's retaliation went beyond corporate disputes into attacking families. She pulled back, eyes shining. He's going to fight this. Lawsuits, public battles, everything he's got. But he's out of the company. And the SEC investigation can proceed without his interference. What happens to Cross Holdings now? Now we clean house, review every acquisition from the past decade, expose the fraudulent ones, make restitution where possible. It's going to tank our stock price and cost millions in settlements. Evelyn's smile was fierce. But it's the right thing to do, and I'm done choosing easy over right. Over the following weeks, the transformation was painful and public. Cross Holdings stock did tank when Evelyn announced the internal investigation. Several board members resigned rather than face scrutiny. William Cross filed lawsuits claiming wrongful removal and demanding reinstatement. But Evelyn stood firm. With Eleanor and 3 other board members backing her, she hired outside auditors, opened the books, and began the long process of accountability. When they found evidence of fraud in the Helix Systems acquisition, she called Caleb personally. We're prepared to offer full restitution, she said. Return of your intellectual property, compensation for damages, and a formal apology. It won't undo what happened, but it's a start. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. I don't want money. I want my technology released. The supply chain analytics we developed, it could still help people. Small businesses, logistics companies that can't afford the big solutions. Release it as open source. Let it do the good it was meant to do. Are you sure? The compensation package is substantial, I'm sure. The money won't change what happened, but maybe the technology can change something for someone else. He paused. Besides, I'm doing okay now. Picked up a consulting contract helping a startup with their analytics. Turns out 5 years of delivery driving taught me a lot about logistics efficiency. Evelyn laughed. Of course it did. Okay, we'll release the Helix technology as open source with your name attached. Let the world see what William tried to bury. The SEC investigation concluded 4 months after it began with substantial fines for Cross Holdings and criminal charges filed against 3 executives involved in fraudulent acquisitions. William Cross himself avoided prosecution by a narrow margin, but his reputation was destroyed. The man who'd built an empire on other people's ruins watched it crumble under scrutiny. Through it all, Caleb and Evelyn built something quieter but more substantial. They took things slow for Mia's sake. Dinners together, weekend trips to aquariums and museums, the slow integration of lives that had started in crisis and settled into something resembling normal. I like having Evelyn around, Mia announced one Saturday morning over pancakes. She listens when I talk about penguins, and she's not boring like Daddy's other friends. I don't have other friends, Caleb protested. Exactly. You need more friends. Mia turned to Evelyn with the serious expression she used for important matters. Are you going to marry my daddy? Evelyn, to her credit, didn't choke on her coffee. That's a very direct question. Mrs. Chen says you should. She says Daddy is happier when you're here and that you look at him like he's special. Mia took another bite of pancake. So are you? Mia, that's not appropriate, Caleb started. Yes, Evelyn said. Caleb's head snapped up. What? Yes, I'm going to marry your daddy, assuming he asks. Evelyn met Caleb's shocked gaze with calm certainty. We've been dating for 6 months. I love him. I love you. I want to build a life together if he's willing. Mia clapped her hands. He's willing, right, Daddy? You're willing. Caleb looked at his daughter's expectant face, at Evelyn's calm smile, at the breakfast table that had somehow become the site of the most important conversation of his life. 6 months ago, he'd been a struggling delivery driver counting pennies for medical bills. Now he was sitting across from a woman who'd chosen him over an empire, who'd fought beside him through custody battles and corporate warfare, who was calmly proposing marriage via his 7-year-old daughter. I'm willing, he said, but I'm supposed to be the one doing the asking. You can make it official later, with a ring and proper romance and whatever else you want. Evelyn stood, walked around the table, and kissed him soundly while Mia giggled. But the answer is still yes. The proposal came 3 weeks later in the most unromantic location possible, the roof of Caleb's apartment building at sunset. No restaurant reservations, no elaborate planning, just the two of them and the city spread out below like possibility made visible. I know this isn't fancy, Caleb said, pulling a small box from his pocket. I know you're used to estates and crystal and everything I can't provide. But I love you. I want to wake up next to you every day and fight our battles together and watch Mia grow up with both of us. So, will you marry me? Officially? Evelyn looked at the ring, a simple band with a single stone, probably all he could afford, and started crying. It's perfect, you're perfect, yes, absolutely yes. He slid the ring on her finger, and it caught the sunset light like a promise. I should warn you, marrying me means signing up for a lifetime of modest living and complicated family dynamics. And marrying me means signing up for vindictive ex-fiancés and corporate drama and a father who'll probably try to destroy us on our wedding day. Evelyn kissed him. But I think we can handle it. They told Mia that night. She drew them a picture of a family, 3 stick figures holding hands under a sky full of stars, and titled it Forever Home. The wedding was small and private, held in a garden in Queens with fewer than 30 guests. No society pages coverage, no elaborate flowers, nothing that resembled the Hartford Stone spectacle. Just friends and chosen family watching 2 people who'd found each other in a corporate hallway commit to building something real. Mrs. Chen cried through the entire ceremony. Mia was flower girl and took her duties very seriously. Eleanor gave a toast about courage and choosing love over legacy. And when Caleb and Evelyn exchanged vows they'd written themselves, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. I promise to stand beside you when it's hard, Evelyn said, to fight our battles together, to choose you every day even when it's easier not to be the partner you deserve and the mother Mia deserves, to build something honest with you, something that can't be bought or corrupted or torn down by people who don't understand its value. I promise to see you, Caleb said. Not the CEO or the cross-heiress, but the woman who dances badly and cooks in ball gowns and chose integrity over inheritance. I promise to love you through corporate warfare and family drama and whatever else comes. To be honest, even when it's uncomfortable, to stay even when leaving seems safer. To build a home with you, not a house or an empire, but a home where we both belong. When they kissed as husband and wife, Mia cheered so loudly her hearing aids squealed with feedback. Everyone laughed. It was perfect and messy and completely them. A year later, Evelyn stood in front of Cross Holdings' board presenting her final transformation plan. The company had survived the scandal. had emerged leaner and more ethical, had begun the slow work of rebuilding trust. Under her leadership, they'd established a foundation to support entrepreneurs whose businesses had been destroyed by predatory acquisitions. The first recipient was a young woman whose logistics startup had been buried by competitors. "We can't undo the past," Evelyn told the board, "but we can stop repeating it. We can choose to build instead of destroy, to elevate instead of bury, to be the company we should have been all along." The vote was unanimous. Cross Holdings would continue its transformation, would become the ethical alternative in a cutthroat industry, would prove that integrity and profit could coexist. After the meeting, Evelyn called Caleb from her office, the same office where this all started with a wedding invitation and desperation. "How'd it go?" he asked. "They approved everything, the foundation, the new ethics board, even the truth and reconciliation process for past acquisitions." She looked out at the Manhattan skyline. "It's going to take years, maybe decades, to fully repair the damage, but we're doing it. I'm proud of you. Come have lunch with me? I want to tell you about a woman we're helping. She reminds me of you. Brilliant, screwed over by people who should have known better, refusing to stay down. Can't. I'm at Mia's school for parent-teacher conferences, but I'll be home for dinner." He paused. "Love you. Love you too." Evelyn hung up and turned back to her desk. The wedding invitation from Damien's marriage, the one that started everything, sat in a frame on her bookshelf. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the worst moments led to the best outcomes. That choosing authenticity over appearance could cost everything and be worth it anyway. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mia. "Drawing of penguins for your office. Daddy says I can visit tomorrow." Evelyn smiled. A year ago, she'd been alone in this office, staring at an invitation and planning revenge. Now she had a husband who saw her, a stepdaughter who drew her penguins, and work that mattered. She'd lost an empire but gained a home. Sometimes the best revenge wasn't proving you'd moved on. It was actually moving on to something real, something honest, something worth fighting for. She picked up her phone and typed back to Mia. "Can't wait to see it. Save me a spot on the fridge." Then she got back to work, building the future she and Caleb had chosen. One honest decision, one ethical choice, one day at a time. Because in the end, that was what mattered, not the headlines or the stock prices or the society pages, just the small moments of choosing right over easy, love over fear, truth over performance. Just three stick figures holding hands under stars, building a home that no one could buy or corrupt or tear away. Just a family choosing each other, on purpose, forever.